W. Wymdry 6-NJ Cornell University Library from Cornell University Library BF 1567F 79 1911 Allusions to WFL5J FJ IJFJ M 3 1924 028 958 092 TMFSOI in the original of this book is in the Cornell University Library. There are no known copyright restrictions in the United States on the use of the text. http://www.archive.org/details/cu319240289589092 bpvan 7 fbouibe sas dub hasis yukso volux allusions to witchcraft and other prilmfe beliefs in the Zoroastrian literatui L J Frachtenbe, M.A. Koyambia Universe Y. New York, Bombay. Printed at the Ford Printing Press I9 RI 400 Das Ter Hashang Memorial Volume Iranians that we owe the general designation for magic. The word magi, as is well known, is derived from the Old Persian ma'a, and denotes pretended, art of controlling occult forces and of producing effects contrary to the known order of nature. The purpose of this article is to gather all the more important allusions to sorcery and witchcraft and other practices included in the general term magic, contained in the Zoroastrian literature *, and to present also a concise exposition of certain other primitive beliefs prevalent among the ancient Iranians. The aim is merely to supply, for the time being, the need of a more general and exhaustive work, and for that reason, and because of limitations of space, this monograph is not too tended to be comparative in its character. Only in cases where it feels desirable to bring out a point more clearly, have I drawn attention to analogies among other races. For the sake of convenience, the matter to be discussed has been divided into the following subdivisions: 1. Sorcery and witchcraft, 2. Wizards, witches, kavas, and karpans, 3. The evil eye, 4. Nail paring and hair cutting, 5. Noxious creatures, 5. Miscellaneous beliefs, 7. Eye spells and exorcisms. Short discussion on the nature of these categories will precede each subdivision. 1. Sorcery and witchcraft. The belief in sorcery and witchcraft is one of the most universal and deep-rooted beliefs in the heart of man. It is found spread over such a vast area and has penetrated so deeply into the very soul of every people that, as John Wesley, the noted English divine, has said, to give up the belief in witchcraft would be to the etymology and original unioning of this word ruuli noun. For a discussion see Bartholomew, air.wh. Col. 1111 under Magic. 2 JFAE7/CN/N, E-8A/VFCZQ/Ket/Joe, ed. By Gilman, Peck, and Colby, 12.678, New York, 1908. 8. To this end the author has examined the contents of the Zoroastrian literature, as far as they were accessible through translations, printed texts, and transliterated editions of manuscripts. The references include the Avesta proper, the Pahlavi commentaries and translations of Avestan texts, the other Pahlavi writings, both on religious and on non-religious subjects, some specimens of the so-called modern Persian Zoroastrian literature of the Parsis, notably the Sad Dar and Z Irdisp 10 Mag, those two latter books being sequels to the Pahlavi Diakart and Z Tisparam, Witchcraft in Zoroastrian Literature 401 Give Up the Bible. The names under which this belief is known, vary according to the extent to which it occurs among the different races, and the designations are often chosen arbitrarily by the writers. The most frequent terms assigned to it are, magic, enchantment, demonology, Satanism, divination, sorcery, witchcraft and phallicism. In Avestan the term usually employed is ithwa, literally sorcery. The attitude which the ancient Iranians took towards the practice of sorcery and witchcraft was wholly hostile in its character. In this they coincided with the other races of remote ages, for no ancient race is known to have furthered or even to have tolerated the practice of sorcery and magic using that term in the sense of black magic. Consequently, a spirit of hostility permeates in the highest degree the sacred books of the Zoroastrians, which is in perfect accordance with the doctrine of two supreme principles of this religion. To a worshipper of Ahura Mazda there is nothing more hateful and heinous than Ahriman and his creation. And we have the authority of the Vendidad, I-14, for the statement that Ngramenu, who is all death, counter-created the evil work of witchcraft Agalitava, and of the Dridashan, 28. 40, that of the evil spirit are the law of vileness, and the religion of sorcery. As a product of Ahriman's wicked creation, the sin of witchcraft is anathematized by the Iranians as an abominable crime. In the Pahlavi book Dinti Mano J. Iklrat, 36. 17, for example, the sage asks the spirit of wisdom, which sin is the most heinous, and the answer is given, the practice of witchcraft Kjatui or Zandki Kund, and in Hhekvstukdas, witchcraft is called the most grievous sin of all. How much the Iranians loathed sorcery. 1 Ferrer, in Smith's Dictionary of Bible, SV Divination, 1.445. Thou shalt not sue a witch to live. Exodus 22.1 F. A man, also a woman that hath a familiar spirit, or that you a wizard, shall surely be put to death. Leviticus 20.27. For all incantations intended to destroy life, for magic rites with roots and for various kinds of sorcery a fine of 230 panis shall be indicted. Manu Q.29 Q. The ancient Babylonians seem to be an exception to this rule, for, according to Sayce, witchcraft and necromancy flourished in Babylonia. The state religion was compelled to recognize it and to lend it its sanction and control. Ahcs, the Beliant of ancient Egypt and Babylonia, p. 319. Edinby G.H., 1902. E.W., West, 1 He meaning of Kvituf Das, SBE. 18.417, 1402 Daster Hoshang Memorial Volume is shown clearly by a passage in Dinjay 8. 3513, why this practice is compared to the sin of unnatural intercourse for which there is no atonement. This passage asserts that those who perform unnatural intercourse are merged in sinfulness as the serpent Sr6BFIR, AVA2HI Sravarsi, is in witchcraft. Terrible punishments hereafter await those who have resorted to sorcery. According to the Arid Vitrav Namak, they lacerate their breasts with their hands and feet, their feet stand on hot iron and dogs gnaw their bellies, their tongues are cut away and their eyes are gouged out, snakes, scorpions, worms, and other noxious creatures devour their brain, and from time to time they themselves seize upon their own body and gnaw their own flesh until at last they are forced to devour their own dead refuse. This attitude of the Iranians towards sorcery finds its justification in the disastrous consequences which were brought about by witchcraft. Its nature, by which it is known and seen at once, says Vendid 1. 14, in the words of Dharmastiter's rendering, is such that wheresoever they, the wizards, go forth and raise a cry of sorcery, itum ntm, there, in the Hatumant region, the most deadly works of witchcraft yutumasma, go forth, from there they come and kill and strike at heart and they bring locusts as many as they want. Through sorcery it thwa, states Yasnaid. 3. The world of righteousness is ruined, and the selections from Ztsparam, 2. 7. Assert that destruction and injuries to mankind are due to it, while the Baman Yasht, 2. 26, claims that through witchcraft itmh, the race of wrath rushes into the countries of Iran and everything encounters annihilation, direst destruction, and trouble. Witchcraft is furthermore a source of apostasy, for according to Bimdashan 28. 4. Ahriman seduces men into affection for himself and to devotion for Ahura Mazda by their belief in witchcraft, it tucked in, and, according to Dinkart 7. 472, mankind came to idolatry through the sorcery performed by Da and K in Babylon. Sorcery is 1 VD 1.11. AV 76. AV 81. Asterisk AV 35. 5 See below under noxious creatures, BLE Flofi ACRGE Center LE Sayatan ESTI Abandonuda Saro Ellery, ETCE Charactesari Paralled Sesi K Tons Le Homs, ki vienant de oi lu exero and I astrologed, ces magiens yenjayer la neaga, logregal, I rein phi etle solder l, darms teder, le7ja. 2,13.n.32, Parfont witchcraft in Zoroastrian literature 403 also the cause of many a quarrel, as shown by a passage in David 17:6, which states that there are 6 modes of engaging in conflict, through assault, false teachings, and through speaking with wizards spells at Tikgovishlia. The demons in particular are said to have practiced sorcery. Nukterg, who was anxious to obtain the glory of Faradun, is reported by the Biandashan, 31. 32, to have created by magic a cow and to have fed her with the reeds on which the glory had settled in the hope that by giving her milk to his sons they might come into possession of the much coveted prize of the divine splendor. The serpent Srdbsr, as already mentioned, was also skilled in this art. Asterisk the monster Azida and Ka of Babylon was another demon whose fame as a sorcerer seemed to have been worldwide. He was well versed in witchcraft, being the first one to glorify it asterisk and to introduce into the world many ways of sorcery, jadul, and evil doing. The Distanti Dinig, 37. 97, relates that he had once escaped from the fetters of Faradun and became through witchcraft a powerful demon until Kir's Spot the S and man, crushed his fiendishness with a cypress club and brought him back to the just law of the sacred beings. His evil deceits done in Babel through witchcraft were a surprise to everyone. Dura.Sr6b6, one of the 5 Karpan brothers, who were inimical to Zoroaster, was the 4th demon renowned for sorcery, although his greatness in occult sciences does not compare to that of his predecessor Dake. It is related by the Dinkard, 7.38, that after the birth of Zarathustra this foul Durazra 6b6 through his witchcraft casts such a fear into the mind of the child's father, P6RUSH and SPO, that he asked the wizard to kill Zarathustra's registered trademark on another occasion, says Dinkard, 7.332, when the young child was playing with other infants, he and his brother BRTR6K Resh terrified the children through sorcery in order to injure Zarathustra. The second of the 5 Karpan brothers, named Bradra 6K Resh, was likewise a magician. He was the most far one for an explanation of this VASEC below P406. DK 8.3J13. DK 9.10.3. DD 72.3. AOG. 65.9 DK 7.T.72. DK 7.3.4. ZN 202.3. When quoting Pahlavi writings I use Zarathustra for the Zarathustra form of the Avesta, for an exhaustive discussion of the Tantraols preceding and following Zoroaster's birth. Cav Williams Jackson, Zoroaster, the Prophet of Ancient Iran, p. 23-29, New York, 1899. 404 Daster Hoshang Memorial Volume seeing as to witchcraft in his district / and a powerful chief of the magicians. Afrasiab, the Turk, is said by the Ao Jamadiched, 65, to have vainly tried to escape through witchcrafted Tustri, the onslaught of Ast6Vidhm, the demon of death. The whole Turanian race was accused of sorcery, for a legend says that on seeing the partiality of the Holy Ox in settling their land disputes with the Iranians, the Turanians proceeded to destroy by witchcraft the object of their anger. Another demon well versed in magic was Oct, the wizard, who asked 33 enigmas of Y6SHT Irian 6 *, and the same ill repute was borne by Vidraf Sher, the magician, who with a weapon forged by witchcraft killed in the battle of Bisht-Spa against the Hyanians the commander-in-chief of the Iranians. Zarir Markusha was the last male demon to be accused of witchcraft, it being stated in the Dinkard, 7.93, that most of mankind perished through the winters and witchcraft of Marcus. The harlot as a personification of lustfulness is also connected with sorcery, as shown by the following Avestan prayer 0 contained in Yasna 9. 32 Hauma, who are Eldimace against the body of Jahi devoted to Ma Gigy Duviadid. Even Zoroaster's own mother, Dutog, Av Dugd Sv, the most pure of maidens, did not escape this terrible accusation of using enchantments. Tradition relates that when the demons realized the futility of their attempts to kill Zarathustra's mother, they caused Winter, the demon of pestilence, and oppressive enemies to invade the district, and claimed that Duttob, through her witchcraft, brought these disasters upon her tribesmen. How susceptible people were in those days to this accusation is clearly demonstrated by the fact that no persuasions or proofs could clear Duttob in the eyes of her countrymen. The people demanded that she leave the district, and Duttob was forced to submit. In like manner, Zoroaster, the prophet himself, had on one occasion to suffer from the consequences of such an accusation. The Zertushtname, 895-940, relates that the wise men of King Gusht and Sp, jealous of Zarathustra's success at court, accused him of idk July 3, 21. *YF 4.10, d. 7.2 JZN 330 YZ 74.99 DK July 2, 63. DK 7.2.p.7. Witchcraft in Zoroastrian literature A6A practicing sorcery. All proofs being against him, the prophet was cast for a time into prison, but finally released by a miracle. The inference that the evil spirit, Ahriman, practiced sorcery can be drawn from the nature of the technical term for the verb to create that is used to denote the act of creating by Ahriman. The Avesta uses in such cases the expression /rak tat, which is usually rendered by counter-created or miscreated. In an article which appeared in the Spiegel Memorial volume, I have shown that this expression has a derogatory meaning and that it is used to differentiate the act of creating by Engramenu, which is unlawful and pernicious, from that of Ahura Mazda, which is lawful and beneficial. The nature and character of Ahriman as well as that of his creatures are so heinous and horrible that they warrant the assumption of a creation by magic and witchcraft. It is therefore permissible to translate //kr by created through witchcraft, as was done by Darmstedter in his first translation of the Vendid. Of the many Ahrimanian creatures, the most important for our consideration are the serpent in the river, the locusts, ants, the Parikphycnathidi, the evil work of witchcraft, menstruation, and the evil eye, all of which are mentioned in the sacred books of Zoroastrianism. The struggle against witchcraft and its adherents forms a very interesting part of the Zoroastrian belief in sorcery. Ahura Mazda is said by the selections from Z and Thsparam, 1. 4, to have been engaged in a conflict with Ahriman in order to keep away the archfiend from his territory, and that he accomplished this through pure words that confounded the witchcrafted Tukstartako Karto, Oi the enemy, and the same source states in another connection, ZSP 2. 7, that the supremely benefiting fire struggles, as an assistant to SR6SH, with the spiritual fiend, and watches especially at night the celebration of witchcraft. Zarathustra has, according to Dinkart 7.5. 8, disclosed to mankind the rights of driving out pestilence and of disabling sorcery and witchcraft, Leo. J. Frachtenbe, Etymological Studies in Ormazdian and Anmaian Words in Avestan, pages 269 to 289. Bombay, 1908. Z.A. She. 4 Oxford, 1830, a VD 1.2.4.6.9.13.17, 20-3.6.7.9. *BW West. TAII selections of 7 Jad Sparain in Avesta, Faklabi, etc. Sti dies in honor of D. P. B. Sanjana, First Series, p. 44, Strasbourg, 1904, 406. Daster Hoshang Memorial Volume and a Vendidad passage calls the Mazdayasnian law a good remedy against the slaying by witchcrafted Tughnim. The horror of the crime of sorcery made the true Zoroastrian anxious to avoid it and actuated him to repent it even in cases where no offense took place. The Padits, for example, the Zoroastrian confessional formulae, contain invariably the following phrase: I repent with thoughts, words, and deeds all my sins belonging to the great Agirfy and to etc. or I repent the utterance of magical spells, the practice of magic, the worshipping of sorcerers and the teaching of witchcraft. Even at the moment when the Mazda worshipper is to enter into matrimonial life, he is reminded of the crime of sorcery, as we know from the Nik and H, or marriage prayer, which closes with the words, "Let one praise the pure and drive away sorcery." It is to be greatly regretted that so many nasks of the original Avesta were lost or destroyed. From the short extracts of them given in the Dlnkart, we can infer that they contained highly valuable information on the practice and nature of witchcraft, which is not to be found in the nasks that escaped destruction. The Nikodum Nask, for instance, gave an exposition of the existence of many kinds of speaking with wizard spells, and it contained also a discussion of the possibility of inflicting the death penalty upon children for speaking with wizard spells when in company of their guardians, and also upon a woman, when she is her own guardian. The speaking with wizard spells, av tuxte, phi, ydthk govishnied, as noted above, was classified as one of the 6 modes of engaging in conflict and was looked upon as a very grave offense. The form of such a spell, as preserved in the Pahlavi book Farhang I Oim Evok, Reichilds ed 25a, Hoshangji and Hogs ed. 34-3, 72. 10, was, Kagao etikut, pay id tuki ape mernjinum, which West translates, when 11 vd 3*1. Ed. NL Vestsriga IRD, p. 360. For a discussion of Yaluage Hemc Bartholomew, ALRWB. CO. 12 LS Paytet Claude 3, Vatet 3810, Paytet Adurbit 5, IA Spiegel, Cordiasista 207-229. Paroles de Bourselary, Darmstädter, Leza. 3173 for Insaner la Magie, Lu. Oit, 6 Father Spiegel, K/W, R, ZA.Iltiest. 3.233 Essenquar de Magie, Lu. Oit. TDK 8.17.6, 19.2. 20.39. SDK August 20, 83. See above, p. 403. Witchcraft.ft in Zoroastrian literature 407 says, I will destroy thee by witchcraft / Thensisk, from which this quotation is taken, treated also the subject of evidence of witchcraft, of the infliction of the death penalty on account of entertaining fondness for witchcraft and for laughing at it. It contained likewise a summary of the practice of witchcraft as far as the moderate and justifiable production of mutual afflictiveness thereby was concerned / the Sikdum Nask, moreover, is reported to have given a discussion of the manifest indications of witchcraft and ordeals whereby a person accused of witchcraft could be incriminated or acquitted on such a charge, *, and finally, the Spend Nask contained a collection of different opinions about sorcery must not neglect. Moreover, to state equals in conclusion that there is a gloss, id tuxta id tukgovishnied found in the Farhang Elog Mivok, Reichilds ed 25a, Hoshangji and Hogs ed. 34-3, 72. 10 / This completes the list of practically all pas-aoes in the Zoroastrian literature that allude to the practice of sorcery and witchcraft. From what has been said above, it can be seen that the Iranians, as they appear to us from their religious writings, were confronted with the primitive belief in sorcery and witchcraft from the earliest times. They held it, however, in accordance with the pure principles of their lofty religion, in extreme abhorrence, putting it on an equal footing with the 3 great sins, which the Mazdaisnian religion deems inexpiable. The practice of sorcery undoubtedly existed in ancient Iran, being present subconsciously in the minds of the people even in the days of Zoroaster. It did not, however, play as important a role as among the other races, owing to the strict adherence of the Iranians to the Mazdaisnian religion and to its sound and simple teachings. But, later on, when the influence of Zoroastrianism began to decline, the belief in sorcery assumed larger proportions, and became a powerful factor in the everyday life of the Iranian. This latter point is substantiated by the fact that in the Avesta proper the allusions to sorcery and witchcraft are quite scarce, whereas in the Pahlavi and other post-Zoroastrian writings there are numeri EW West, Vineldeya Tex, She. 37.40 and 4. DK 8.19.64.65. DK 820.39. Asterisk DK 8.42 L3. DK 7.8.6, VD 1.11.12.16, DK 8.36,13. 408 Daster Hoshang Memorial Volume US references to it, showing thereby that the Iranians too as so many other races had finally become the victims of the mysterious fascination of magic. 2 was Aeds, witches, Kabas, and Karpans, the belief in wizards and witches, that is to say, in individuals who exercise some mysterious dread power over others, has sufficiently been indicated in the preceding chapter to require any further introduction. Belief in such beings has existed at different times among every people, and the nature attributed to the idea of them has varied only according to the individual conceptions of magic. The Iranian sorcerer, Aviad II, Fi Yadak, Persian Yat W, he differs in no respect from his compeer in the other races. Is a human being whose mind is bent solely upon harming his fellow creatures. The witch Idat Parika, Fi Parik, Persian Parlf is the feminine counterpart of the wizard, and has a somewhat different nature in ancient Persia from that usually assigned to her. She corresponds more to the idea of an enchantress, and is represented as a beautiful, supernatural female, whose rancor is aimed chiefly at seducing the Mazdaisnian from the true religion by means of love artifices. The Kabas * and Karpans, who are commonly associated with this evil company in the formulaic anathema of the Avestan texts, hold a somewhat different position than the two preceding in the Zoroastrian hierarchy of malignant creatures. These names were originally applied to the priests and kings of the non-Zoroastrian faith *. Tibet afterwards became the enemies both of the people and the Mazdaisnian religion, and they evinced an exceptional hatred one of the vast Iamber of Dirua. Only such are considered in this paper as are expressly alluded to as wizards or witches. Her name appears still in modern Persian as Peri, a kind opound fairy, and is familiar through the lyric in Moore's Lallaroo, there stood a Peri at the gate. A. V. Williams Jackson, Die Razaz Religion in Chi Undris dir Iranis Chen Theology 2.665. Strasbourg, 1896-1904, Bartholomew, Air W.B. Colonel 864 under Peri H1. It must be borne in mind that the Avesta makes a distinction between good and wicked Kavas. The good Kavas like Kivi Vishtayaspa, Kavi Usan are mentioned in YS 12-746-14, 51.16. 53. YT 5.45.io8. 13.132. 19.71, etc. YS 61.3, VD 18.1. 31.1. See also Darmstädter, CEZA, 1.261, Hang, ICGs on the Sacred Language, Writings, and Religion if the Fanif. SD ed. Edited by E. W. West, p. 289, London 1884. And Bartholomew, Air. W.B. T. Falls. 454,666 Witchcraft.ft in Zoroastrian literature 409 towards the Prophet and his immediate family. Tradition renders these two names as blind and deaf, to the teachings of Zoroaster. In accordance with the vicious nature of the wizards and witches, the Zoroastrian writings represent them as creations of Ngramenu. The Pahlavi 9.24.16, relates that the evil spirit once roared thus, I have produced for the annoyance of any upholder of that, Ahura Mazdaean, religion 99,999 wizards. Another passage, in the Datistan 1 Denig, 37.55, says that the fiend of the gloomy race produced affliction of many, namely, the witches of nature, and, according to Vendid 1. 9, Ngramenu created the witch Knathadi, who clave unto Kir's spa. The Shatrati Aaron refers to Ahriman as a sorcerer full of destruction, who built the city of Amui, the home of Zarathustra, the Spitama, *, and in addition to these references, the Destunidenig, 39. 11, mentions the fact that as soon as Ahriman came upon the creatures, demons, and witches rushed upon the earth. The nature of the witches is partly described in the holy books. According to Yashdate 8, they fly in the shape of falling stars between the earth and heavens, and the later writings depict them as overspreading the light and glory of the shining luminaries, as opposing the celestial sphere and the constellations of the zodiac, and as trying to cut and break up the road and passage of the sun, moon, and stars. Another Pahlavi tradition, contained in the Destunidenig, 24. 5, says that they collect the crimes and sins of a person that are unatoned for, and bring them to the accounting on the third night of one's death. To the wizards was ascribed the faculty of killing persons, of bringing diseases upon them, and of using the nail paring which was thrown away without performing the prescribed rites, as deadly weapons against the bird *6 as described below. These wizards were renowned as physicians, and their medical prowess was often resorted to. Dinhart, 7. 253, narrates that when Dutog, the mother of Zarathustra, was rendered sickly by the demons, she went SBK 1 EW West, Payuav texts, 37. 11.1. and 4. J. J. Modi, Aimterdai Hianda translated with notes, p. 59, Bombay, 1899. dd 3756. *MKH 49.16. MKH 49.13.14. VD 7. 8 DK 8.42.1, VD 17.10. BD, L 9.19. SD 14.10. G also P 426. 52 * 410 Daster Hoshang Memorial Volume to consult a wizard physician, named, Storko / fortunately, she was deterred by a Huramazd, who warned her that the medical treatment by a wizard would mean destruction to her. The selections from Zatspar M \%. 1.2.5, relate that when Zarathustra was declared by the Caribs to be foolish, senseless, and secretly corrupt, his father went with him to a wizard to have him cured. The wizard, as the story goes on, urinated into a cup and offered it to Zarathustra in the hope that by drinking this potion the prophet would become really polluted. Wizards were known also as astrologers and interpreters of signs. TLAE selections from Zatspar M \A.1Q\7, 2 that Zarathustra laughed aloud at his birth. The father wished to know the reason of this uncommon phenomenon, and he asked a wizard, who answered him thus: he who laughs during his birth does so, because he sees righteousness as his end. In another passage P6 Rushvi SP6 is said to have asked a Karap wizard for an explanation of the marks and specks on Zarathustra's body / the Adkari Zarturdan, 35-39, describes how King Vishtasp asked Jam and Sp, the foreteller, to foretell from the stars the probable results of his battle with the magician Arj and Sp of the White Hyeonas. The prophecy did not please the king, and he angrily exclaimed, "You magician, you deceitful slave, you are not right, since your mother was a sorceress and your father a liar." Wizards and witches were especially dreaded for their malicious vindictiveness towards pregnant women and newly born children. Thus the Dinkard, 8.3.8.6, Esmayist Idishtdiast, 12. 12, and the Sayur, 16. 1-4, are unanimous in advising the maintenance of a fire for at least 3 days and nights in a house that shelters a pregnant woman, or a woman recently delivered of a child and of a newly born child, in order that the wizard and witches may not do any harm unto them. The Iranian wizards and witches, like those believed in by we other races, give birth to various noxious creatures, are told by the 5:2n/Efeson, 23. 1. That when Yuma lost the glory of his one, see also ZSP 14-3.4. ZSP 162. YZ 51 *, the custom of burning a light day and night for the protection of a newly born child is quite universal. See Bulward by Teak Mvui, p425f, Witchcraft in Zoroastrian Literature 41a Sovereignty, he fled with his sister Umak from the country. Witch and a demon who we'd sent by the demons to overtake the fleeing couple, won their confidence, and the four continued the journey together. After a certain period the wizard married Umak, while Yuma espoused the witch. Various noxious creatures, such as the bear, Gondarup, G6sabar, the tortoise, frog, and others were said to have been the offspring of these unions. The terrified Umak wished to divorce the demon, and one day when Yuma and the wizard were intoxicated, she changed garments and places with the witch and lay down with Yuma, performing thereby the Kvituk Das, Aviatayat the next of kin marriage, which was looked upon, later on, as a powerful means of smiting wizards and witches. It is interesting to note that, according to the Zoroastrian belief, the Negro owes his origin to such a union. The Pahlavi tradition relates that, during the reign of Azzy-Dahaka, a young woman was admitted to a demon and a young man coupled with a witch. On seeing each other, they had sexual intercourse, and owing to this one intercourse the black-skinned Negro arose. The sacred books of the Zoroastrians mention many individual wizards and witches whose names are handed down to posterity through some great malicious deed. Markusa, mentioned above, was one of these. The Dinkard, 7. 9.3, states that he was a powerful wizard who brought awful winters into the world, so that within 3 such winters a greater part of men and animals perished miserably. Another famous wizard, according to Din AR/ 2.6.8, 7.1.38.39, 9.23.5, was Phraseyav or Frangrasiyak, the Tier, equivalent to Franrasian in the Avesta, who tried to obtain the glory of Kaikosra. Of worldwide fame was also Oct, the sorcerer, called by Zdt Sparamtuzi. 10. Cade Ilsspde, who killed many inhabitants of the city of Enigma expounder Shatroti Frachtenbe, for not being able to answer his 33 questions, and who was in turn slain by Y6Shti Fry N6, the pious star. The same Oct was known likewise as the enemy of good men, and as one who refused to practice the Kvituk Das. Not 1 BW West, the meaning of Evituk Das SBE. 18.418 to 420 BD 23.2. YP. 1,2 etc. EW West, the meaning, if Kvituk Das, SBE. 18.411 412 Daster Hoshang Memorial Volume I Inferior in Iniquitous Practices, according to the Atkarizariarden /VA5 TLI3 Sorkarer Vidfaf Share. LB Israeliatel Tint he was seat by Argisp, the king of Th High.Iorias, at the Liad of a large army against the Iranians. In the battle that took place, Ha killed by means of a Niagic 73x0, 1, Ti3IRIIHIW3I3AL, Zirir, aid me other noble Iranians, until he met death at the hands of Bastur, the youthful son of the Iranian chief / the demon Kundak is called by Bundahishan, 28.42. The steed of wizards and Enmun, the grandfather of Uzabo, is spoken of by the same book, 31.35. As sorcerer, although no spiteful deed is recorded of him. Of the witches, whose namas the Zoroastrian writings handed down to us, the most harmful was the enchantress Kunsithadi, who, according to Vendeldal / 19.5, clave unto Kiers and Spa. Another famous witch, Soyashtade. 51,53.54 tells us, was the Parakadus Hierya, an embodiment of famine, who waged eternal war against the material world of Ahura Mazda, and Avho was successfully opposed by the Raya star, Tishbriya. The third and not the least in this trio, according to the Pahlavi romance Artakshar Teep Baktan, 9.17, was the daughter of Ardavan, who attempted to poison her husband at the suggestion of one of her brothers. In some instances, the special names of witches have not come down to us. The selections from Zdsparam /2.L7-25, I for example, relate that when Srit6 out of compassion refused to slay the holy ox, Kaksa sent him to a jungle in which there dwelt many chiefs of witches. These witches hardened his feelings and he killed the ox. But afterwards a feeling of remorse seized upon him and he begged the king to have him put to death. Kaya sent him to a jungle inhabited by a witch in the shape of a dog. Srito killed this witch, but she divided herself into two. He then constantly slew these witches, until there were 1,000 of them, and this horde finally killed Srito. Some idea of the nature of the Kavas and Karpans, who belong to the ribald crew, can be gained from the Zoroastrian Gathas. According to Yasna 32.12, 44.20, they are evil creatures, of whose curse has slain the Kinake life, and who love Grenia above righteousness. They unite themselves with power in order to YZ. 3.22.48.73.74.99-107 DDP Sanjana, 2/IEKA7 NAM NIR Tax Low Drive Appleton, Bombay, 1806, Witchcraft in Zoroastrian Literature 413 Destroy the life of men by their evil deeds they crush mankind, and their inspiration enables the tyrants of the provinces to continue their pernicious rule. They are enemies of creation, says Yasna 51.14, they do not grant complete harvests from the fields, nor do they give perfect pasture to the kine, and they diffuse woe by their teachings. The later Zoroastrian writings, in which their names are mentioned merely formulaically, know nothing more detailed about the malignant disposition of the Kavas and Karpans towards mankind. An excaption, however, is found in a passage in the selections from Zdt-Sparam, 15.2, which states that the Karaps and Ossakshis were the devastation of Iran. Otherwise these beings, especially the Karpans, are represented by them as spiteful creatures, whose harmful deeds are aimed solely at Zoroaster and his mother. The above-mentioned canon, ZS/15.3, relates that the leaders in this struggle against the prophet were 5 brothers belonging to the Sama Karpan family, and it mentions their names as Bradrukshir, Brdr6 Yasn, Bc Dresh, the Tur, Hazn, and Vadist. Other Versians, when narrating the iniquitous deeds of the individual brothers, give their names as Durpound Isr6b and the wizard, Br4Dr6Krsh the Karap, who was great in destroying the righteous, *Br Mavakshir, the heterodox wizard, who put to death the best of men, Vamboist, the enemy of all sacred things, and Z and K*. There are many passages in the sacred books that deal with the animosity of the Karpans against the Spitama family to which Zarathustra belonged, and they seem to echo some distant note of priestcraft and reform. The Dlngart, for example, according to its own statement in the introductory chapter CZ/C5.2.3, tells about wizards, witches, tyrants, KTGS, and Karpans, who have produced outrage for Zarathustra during his birth and wee childhood with a desire for his destruction. Know from the same canon K7.2.9, that first his mother was chiefly exposed to their rancor. They accused her of witchcraft and induced her countrymen to banish her from the district. As soon as she became pregnant they afflicted her with a painful fever so that she won Ys. 46.11.3 Ys. 48.10 SDK 2.42-44. 7.3.4.5.7.32, ZSP 19.1. D. 72.8. DK July 4, 21. Asterisk DK 7.3.21.32. 8-35-13, DK July 4, 64. 414 Daster Hoshang Memorial Volumi might have to seek medical treatment from a wizard. When they saw that they could not prevent the birth of the child, the wizards at once concentrated their attacks upon the infant. The selections from Zatsparam tell us that during the mother's parturition 7 Karpan wizards sat at the foot of the bed. After the child's birth, thus the tradition goes on, the father P6 rushes P6, whose kinsmen were Abhishards, according to Dinhart 5.2.4, invited Durazar 6b6 to inspect the marks and specks on the infant's body. The Karap then started to twist with his paws the tender head of the child, but had to desist from this vicious action, because his hands began to wither. On another occasion, we are told, the Karap persuaded P6 Rushisp6, that Zaratusht ought to be killed. The father consequently surrendered his son to the wizard, who at first attempted to burn him alive but as the wood did not catch fire, he cast him before oxen, in the hope that the beasts might trample the youth to death. But here again Providence saved the boy. He then placed the helpless infant on a narrow path, leading to a drinking pool for horses, and as the horses carefully avoided the infant, he cast it into a wolf's lair whose cubs were killed before, so that the enraged wolf might surely revenge the death of its cubs upon the innocent child. The sorcerer was again foiled in his design. Seeing that they could not destroy the life of Zoroaster, the Karaps strove to attack his soul. The selections from Zrtshtian, 18.5, relate that P6 Rush SP6 brought his son to the wizards to cure him from his alleged foolishness, and they gave him a foul potion with the hope of contaminating his nature. Another interesting encounter between Zarathustra and the Karaps is told by Dinkart 7.3.34-35, and Zrtshtian 19.1-3. The sorcerer Durazardbo one day visited P6 Rush's SP6's house, and was asked by the latter to consecrate a bowl of mare's milk. Zarathusht objected to this, and with the sagacity of a child intentionally spilled the milk. The enraged Karap thereupon threatened to destroy the boy, and not succeeding in this he left the house in disgust and despair. 1 DK July 2, 53. ZGP 14.2. Zep. 14,3 C-pound. Also ZN. 184 Dinkart 7.3.2. Substitutes Midwibia, DDI/D, for witches. DK 7.4.7. ZSP 16.2-4. ZN. 216 DK 7.3.8-11. ZAP. 16.7, ZN. 220 DK 7.3.11.1, 2, ZSP 16.4-6 ZN 238 pound F, DK 7.3.13.14 JZAP 16.6, ZN 260 FF1 DK 7.3.15, JZAP 16.8, ZN 282 FF. Witchcraft in Zoroastrian literature 415. The attempt made by Dur Sr 6b6 and Brmr 6k Resh to injure Zaratusht while he was playing with other children has been mentioned at above. The Nkart, 7.4.64.67, tells us that through revelation the prophet was aware of the plotting by the Karaps against his life. This, however, did not prevent him from attempting to proselyte them. From the Dinkart, 7.4.2.6.14, furthermore, we know that by the command of Ahura Mazda, Zaratusht recited the prophecy of his religion before an assembly of Kigs and Karaps, and that when they heard those words, the Karaps rushed upon him strivitig to bring about his death. The prophet, however, did not lose his courage. He continued to give his prophetic message and to exhort his adversaries to embrace the religion of Ahura Mazda. That the sorceress Karaps had sufficient reason to hate and fear Zoroaster is a well-established fact. According to BRFTTRDK Resh's own admission, they hated the son of P6 Rush 4 SP6, because owing to his action, the demon and fiend, the wizard and witch, will become buried below the earth and fall paralyzed back to Hu**, and because he will break every enchantment and destroy every work of the devs. Further recitation of the passages in which Kavas and Karpans are alluded to as wicked beings, would take too much space. From the examples already cited, the reader will be able to judge sufficiently the Zoroastrian conception of their malicious nature. As a consequence of their vicious character, the wizards, witches, Kavas, and Karpans were extremely dreaded, and their fate was held out as a warning to every faithful Zoroastrian. Thus, among the very first things seen in hell by Ardavir and F., according to the well-known Pahlavi treatise Art Vtrdf Endma, 5.8, was the distress and pain and evil stench in the punishments of various I see above p. 403. A DK 7.2730, ZSP 17.4. ZN 201 FE, 339 FE. Asterisk those who wish further information are referred to the following additional passages, YS 51.12, 82.14.15, DK 3.202T.26.28, 34.41.50, 72.45, August 26, 60, 9.29 to 3.4, 39.1.9, 44.14.15, ZAP 21.5, Farhdite Guy Oim Akoli, Rio Heltz ed 4F, Ho Hangji and Hangs ed 15,55, and the Zaratusht J Vidma. There is still a third class of wicked beings, diode to magic, whose nature does not seem transparent. Those are the Khberdhas, Kayadhas, and Zandas mentioned in VD 18.55, 21.17, Farhang I Olmdeva, Rikilts ed. 20, Hoshangji and Hangs ed. Cf. also Bartholomew, Air WBCOLS 462,1622. YS. February 3, 61, 30.9, 70.3, yeah, .4 calls ANV Mazdanan not adhering to the Tyru religion a magician. 416 Daster Hoshang Memorial Volume kinds which the demons and sorcerers and sinners have to undergo. The killing of wizards is recommended by Dinkard, 8.20.98, as a good means of penance for sins. The fear and terror with which the followers of Ahura Mazda looked upon these creatures is best exemplified in the prayers of the faithful. Very few prayers do not contain a supplication to the benevolent spirits to crush the sorcerers and to protect the pious from their rancor. May the much-desired Ariaman praise the believer with Vayadid 20*10.12 smite all manner of diseases and deaths, all the Waitus and Perikas, and all the wicked Jinus, or according to Yash 2.11, let the Waistus be crushed, Zarathustra, both Devas and men, and grant, Mithra, that I may smite the malice of Waitus and Perikas, the Kavas and Karpans / the reciter of Yasna 9.18. Supplicates Hauma thus, I make claim to thee, Hauma, that I may overwhelm the angry hate of the sorcerers and witches, of the Kavas and Karpans. He furthermore begs, let not our good waters help a sorcerer, and concludes with the assurance, oft do I abjure the Devas and all possessed by them, the sorcerers aid all that hold to their devices, and every being of that sort. Still further prayer contains the ringing appeal, may we be free from the wretched Kuro and the Tarwani and the Karpanvi, or, may Ahriman be smitten and the deceiver cursed, he with the demons, sorcerers, and Perikas in his daily prayer. Moreover, when the pious believer ties the sacred girdle Ijkasti around his body and holds it in a certain prescribed manner, he recites in P and Zand, may Ahura Mazd be Lord and Ahriman, unprevailing, keeping far away, smitten and defeated. May Ahriman, the demons and fiends, the wizards and wicked, the Kigs and Caribs, the tyrants and apostates, the impious enemies and witches be smitten and defeated. Sacrifices and libations were offered and still are offered to the various Ormazdian creatures for the destruction of sorcerers and witches. The Yashts, 5.22.24.26.50, 19.26.28.29.31, tell us that Hushyangha, the Paradesh Ta, Umaksha Ta, Kavi USA and Hus Rava offered a sacrifice to Erdvi Sura Anihita for the Iyt. 10.3 I59. A TS 65-8. YS 12-4 Sir 2-3 CFJJ Modi 2 Amphlets P12 Bartholomew, Gojistali Adla 9.9 EW West, The Nira, IG Einstein, 8BE 18.384 Witchcraft in Zoroastrian Literature 417 Overpowering of the Yadis and Parakes, Kavas, and Karpans In the same manner Takuma Europa is reputed to have asked and obtained from Vaya, the power of destroying the Atitis and Parak S. Zarathustra himself is Reg, ortated by Yasht 1.5.6.10.11. To have asked Ahura Mazda, reveal unto me thy names, Ahura Mazda, that I may afflict all the Y and Tus and Parak and S and that neither Y2 nor Paraka may afflict me. The Zoroastrian of today sacrifices unto the Flapdiringas, or constellation of the Great Bear, in order to oppose the Y4Tu and Paraku, and he chants the Ahanavarya, the Asha Yahishta, and the Nh and Tam as a means of combating and overcoming. He offers up a sacrifice to the sun ** to Tishtraya and to Thritana, and pronounces the praise of Srasha for the same purpose. He worships the Aravishis of the holy king Hushyathna and Husrava to withstand the Y4Tus and Parak S, the Kavas, and Karpans, and he believes that by performing a sacrifice to Vaya degree and by exalting the milk-offering and libation, he will be exempt from the onslaughts of Yadis and Perikas. Besides these prayers and oblations, the Mazda worshipper performs other rites and ceremonies which, according to his belief, will help him in his struggle against these vicious creatures. Thus he follows the commandment of Bent 8.80. By offering sweet-smelling wood unto the fire, in the belief that wheresoever the wind will carry the perfume of the fire, thereafter, the son of Ahura Mazda, will go and kill thousands of Devas, fiends, and couples of Iphitus and Parak and S, and he purifies a faithful man by reciting the following formula contained in Vendid 11.9. 12. I drive away the Parak S, that comes upon the fire, water, earth, cow, and tree. Finally, the truly orthodox perform the Khv Tukdas in order to destroy wizards and witches. Numerous are the elements and persons that have the power of smiting wizards and witches. The Dzidnibanig, 38.32, states that all sacred ceremonies of the earth, the light, rains and angels vanquish wizards and witches, and Yasna 4.3. asserts that every heavenly Yazida will free men from the Ittis and 1 YT. 15.12 Sir. 2.2 YS 1116-. 53 Sir 2.I.S 8 YS. 61.63 IYT. 6.4 YT. 8.44 YT. 11.6 YT, 13.104. YT 13135. Low YT. 15.56 EW Wesf, Tjip me EMI of Fu KHR Ndries, She. 18,420 418 Daster Hashang Memorial Volume Parak S. According of to WN/Ref 7.5.8, Zarathustra disclosed the rights of overpowering demons and witches, and opposed successfully many wizards and demon worshippers. The priest, says Binkart 7.8.29, are producing the destruction of harm and of the wizards, and Yash 3.5.9.12.16, claims that the Aryaman prayer smites down the strength of the Ytus and Parakars and of the Jahi, addicted to the Y2. The mere names of the Amishas Spentas, according to Yash 4.8. Smite the seed and kin of the Karpans. Erdvi Stura and Hita is said in the same Yash to crush down the hates of all Yjus and Parakphis, Kavas, and Karpans, and Mithra is spoken of by Yash 10.26, as breaking the skulls of the Devas and punishing the Parak and S. The half-6 Iringas, or the 7 stars of the polar Aeons Telushan, are renowned for opposing the Y and Tus and the Parak S, and, according to Yash 8.39, the star Tishtraya is a destroyer of the witches. Varethrakna, the personification of victory, crushes the malice of the Y and Tus and Parak and S, Kavas, and Karpans *, and the hero TKHM6 RUP is credited with the smiting of wizards and witches and with removing them from among Menkirs, and Spa became famous through the killing of Pitana attended by many Parak S, and Jamshem is glorified by the JDR and DSP Klmak, for having given the demons and fiends into the power of men, he is likewise extolled for having deprived of sight 7. Vicious we fairies are informed by the DINCI for Managai Kairat, 57.27, that Zarathustra threatened Ahriman to shatter the bodies of his demons through the H6M, the sacred twigs and the good religion, and we know from Dinkard, 7,4.61, that when the prophet chanted the Atham Varid formula, the fiend was annihilated and Cheshmak, the Karap, rushed away. Even the animals take part in the eternal struggle against these spiteful creatures of Ungramenu. In the Byandaushan, so often alluded to, we find a passage, BD 19.33, which states that the cock was created in opposition to the wizard, and this highly interesting statement is corroborated by the Pahlavi Shtayast, 10.30, and the Persian Sad Dar, 32,1-5, from what has been shown it is clear that the ancient Iranian 1DK5 2.8, YT 5.13, YT 8.12, MKH 49.I6, asterisk J, KJ9 Anil JJ Modi, Denjaydin Sp.I, asterisk YT, 19.41, YT 14.4.62 Witchcraft in Zoroastrian literature 419 populated his corporeal world with various creatures of a malignant disposition, whom he feared and hated, dreaded and despised. In his struggle against these enemies of organized society he invoked the aid of all creatures, both of heaven and earth, and assisted himself by sacrifices and holy spells against the powers. In that respect the Zoroastrian conception of sorcerers and witches differed little or not at all from that of the other races. There is, however, one very interesting feature in the Mazdaisnian attitude towards enchanters, which occurs nowhere else and which marks their religion of the East as a religion of forgiving indulgence and ultimate hope for all, even for the greatest sinners. In the final day of resurrection, when all sinners will be called to account for their deeds, then says DNAR 7.8.40-, even a Karap and Kai will be mingled again with the good, after having expiated their crimes by allotted punishments. This passage illustrates clearly the great forbearance of the Zoroastrian faith for the unhappy sinners, and it forms a beautiful appendix to the legendary story of King Dvnds, whose whole body, according to tradition, was gnawed by a noxious animal as a punishment for his evil actions, with the exception of his right foot, because with this limb he had once kicked a bundle of hay within the reach of a plowing ox. The evil eye. The belief that there is a power of working evil by a glance of the eye has existed in all times and in all countries. Thomas Elworthy says, it is found in the literature of every people in every land, since history began to be written. No science, no religion, no laws have been able to root out this fixed belief, and no power has ever been able to eradicate it from the human mind, and Bacon calls it the most importunate and continual affection. The possibility of thus working injury was accepted as an allowed fact alike by the fathers of the Church, by medieval physicians, and all writers on occult sciences, while in our own day it still exists among all savage nations and even in we are very midst. All know what the ophthalmos bascanos meant to the Greeks, and the fascinatio to the Romans, and we cis. 12.12, AV 32. 9 Elworthy, 2% evil eye, p. 6. Elworthy, the evil eye, p. 3, Bacon, E's dollari on IE, 420 DASTUIL Hoshang Memorial Volume may well comprehend the dreadful fear with which the English wee peasant still utters his tie is overlooked. Also know what a terrible predicament it was in the Middle Ages to be accused of casting the evil glance, and all those who travel through Italy will bear witness to the extent of the superstitious fear attached by the children of the sunny land to the Malachio or Jetatura. We see evidence of this belief in the power of the eye in the very beginnings of Egyptian mythology. The Supreme Ta is said to be the father of gods and men. He brought forth all the other gods from his eye, which goes to show, says Elworthy, that of all emanations those from the eye were the most potent. The ancient Iranians likewise believed in the existence of this dread power and they connected it closely with the practice of witchcraft. Aspendatirji's translation of the Vend, in speaking of witchcraft, states that it is exercised either by the eye or by the voice. According to Zoroastrianism, the evil eye is a creation of Ungramenu himself and its power was frequently exercised by the archfiend. Vendidad 22.2. says that Ahura Mazda spoke to Zarathustra thus: when I made this mansion, the ruffian looked at me and created against me 99,999 diseases. In translating the word akazat, Darms Tedder * amplifies it by the phrase Jita le mobeasoi, and in addition quotes a passage from Esnig's Refutatlo Harislarum, which states that Ahriman corrupted the good creatures of Aroused by casting upon them the evil eye. The Pahlavi canonical books also ascribe to Ahriman the faculty of harming people by a glance. The Jatsidnel Denig, for example, 137.75, in speaking of the contrast between Ahura Mazda and Engramenu, says that Ormuzd, the creator, is a manager with omniscient wisdom, while the contention of the fiend of perverted glance, Tarnujarishan, is through lust of defilement, and the Bundaishan, 28. 2J claims that the eyesight, Ka'amiklshan, of Ahriman does not refrain from doing harm to the creatures. Ahriman was not the only demon feared because of the power 1L Whirlhi. Ihegov, Eacht, p6, cf. Also the Foyoowini, biblical injunction, eat thou not lhi bread of him that hath an evil eye. Provzs*, the Thurajmeyul.ions to bvh dias, according to West, relate among others to lhi evilik, the killing of noxious creatures, and the use of a tooth. Pyok, BW West, Polylacyl Henwerk, YL 20 YD, 3.6,7. 1 HCZA.2. Witchcraft in Zoroastrian literature 421 of his evil eye. The Builda issue, 28 LISS. 3536, mentions 3 other fiends who possess the faculty of fascination. One of them is Irask, called the spiteful fiend of the evil eye Dushkashmi, the second is Exmgash, spoken of as the malignant-eyed fiend, who smites mankind with his eye, and the third is Astovidhud, the demon of the malignant eye, Sir Kashvi Red Dush, Kashmi, who spoils anything which men look at without saying, in the name of God, and whose glance drives away life. Another demon who could exercise the power of fascination, according to Dhikar 7.3.39, was Bratrakresh, one of the famous Karpan brothers, who was to kill Zarathustra with a glance of his eye. The glance of the eye of a woman during her menstruation period was extremely dreaded by the Zoroastrians, and the sacred books repeatedly warn these women not to look at certain objects. This fear of a menstruous woman's glance is of widespread occurrence, being prevalent even today among the inhabitants of Spain. The Zoroastrians had special reasons thus to regard the glance of a menstruous abdomen, for, according to their belief, menstruation was created by Engrameni and it polluted everything that came in contact with it. Mazdaism, with its watchful anxiety over the bodily and spiritual welfare and purity of its believers, forbade them to associate with a woman during this period or to remain in her vicinity, and in order to assure the observance of this religious law, declared the touch and the look of a menstruous woman to be harmful. There are numerous passages in the Zoroastrian literature dealing with this injunction. The Vendidad, 16.2, for example, directs that the half, or the third, or the fourth, or even the fifth part of a house, that shelters a woman having an issue of blood should be isolated lest she look did hide, upon the fire F and 1 EV/OTTHY, Ihili p.22i. 2 VD January 17, 18. BD 367. A VD 16. The ancient Iranians luated upon a menstruous woman as exercising contamination, and she was therefore kept rhyming that period in absolute isolation from her fellow creatures. This custom is of a very early origin and was prescribed li Isavis in the Devidakal Code. 1519 FF find a similar institution among the American Indians. See Leo. J. P. Lachtenberg, Traditium of the Yoawas Indians of Oregon, in Journal of American H.L. Halor, 22,25-42. Boston, 1909, January-March. Cf. Also Pliny. Est. Nat. 7.13 that the looking of a menstrua warni was different in character and consequence from that of other beings is also shown by the nature of the verb paying did hit and t as a compound. The prefix peild is an adverb implying adversity, and the oleol verb therefore means to look against, to look with a hostile intentio, to look with envy, cf. sarid to work, to accomplish, and naat sandm, opposing. 422 Daster Hoshang Memorial Volume The Dinkart 8.U22 speaks of sickness due to the work of an evil eye or the proximity of a menstruous woman, and it states that a menstruous woman or those possessing the evil eye are exceedingly harmful. The Shtiest Loshtiest, 3.10, claims that a person's hands which have been sprinkled in ceremonial ablution, become unclean by the look of a menstruous woman, and the Peppiwendid, 16.2, further confirms this statement. The later Zoroastrian writing, the Saddar, 41.6, asserts that anything looked at by a menstruous woman, diminishes in glory. Of especially detrimental consequence is the look of Jahi, the female fiend of menstruation. The Vendid, 18.63.64, states that when Zarathustra asked Ahura Mazda to mention the name of the one that grieved him most, the deity answered thus, "It is the Jahi, Zarathustra, whose look nitidity dries up 1/3 of the mighty floods that run from the mountains, whose glance withers 1/3 of the beautiful, golden-hued, growing plants, whose sight withers 1/3 of the strength of Spenta Armadi, and whose touch dries up in the faithful 1/3 of his good thoughts, good words, good deeds, and 1/3 of his strength, fiend-killing power, and holiness." This assertion is again substantiated by the following passage taken from the Saddar, 67.3-4, "If Jahi looks at running water, it diminishes, if she glances at trees or shrub, the fruit becomes scanty, and if she converse with a pious man, his intelligence and holiness are withered by it." And the Shtiest Idishtiest, 3.28-29, in restraining menstruous women from looking at beasts, plants, water, and stars, justifies this restriction by stating that Jahi, the fiend of menstruation, is so violent, that where another fiend does not smite anything with a look, Akshar, she destroys with a glance. As a natural consequence, a menstruous woman is forbidden to look even inadvertently or against her will at fire, water, beasts, plants and stars. Woman with an issue of blood who glances or comes in contact with fire or water, commits, according to the Shtiest Idishtiest, 3.27.28, a sin of 1 farm, of which she can repent by paying a fine of 12 dirhams, and if she repeatedly trans 1 c-pound. Hear the following passage from the Code of Manu, 4.57, conterso not with menstruating woman. SD 68.1-2, Witchcraft in Zoroastrian Literature 423 gresses this restriction. She will be punished in afterlife by being forced to devour her own menstrual discharge. In a similar connection, I may note that it is a universally known fact that many persons are believed to possess the power of fascination acting against the will of the possessor. In Polish folklore, for example, there is a remarkable story of an unhappy man who, in spite of a most loving heart, was affected with the evil eye and who at last blinded himself in order that he might not be the means of injury to his children. The same superstition existed among the Zoroastrians, and it is clearly demonstrated by the following ordinance, contained in Bimdashan, 28.35.36, and Saddar, 15.1.2, when one sees anything that is welcome to the eyes, it is necessary to say in the name of God. For if a person does not do it and an injury happens to that object or a disaster occurs, the person becomes a sinner. Like the Egyptians, Babylonians, and other races, both ancient and modern, the Zoroastrians also believed in the existence of remedies against the power of the evil eye. For example, according to Yasht March 8, 11:15, the Aryaman prayer is a powerful spell against the workings of the evil eye Duzdalthra, and according to Yasht 11:5, he who pronounces the praise of Sriasha is well protected against the fiend tormenting him with a glance of his eyes Ashabia, and the Vend, 20.3.6.7.9, states that Thrida asked and obtained from Kshatravirya some remedies, so as to withstand the evil eye Agashe. It fails, however, to say what these remedies were. There is evidence in the Zoroastrian literature which tends to show that even those who belong to the good creation could exercise the power of fascination, if they so desired. The opening chapter of the Yashts, YT 1.29, tells us that Zarathustra shouted to Ahriman thus, "I shall throw thee back into the earth," whereupon the ruffian was made powerless by the eyes, Dithrod Hyo, of Spenta Armadi. The selections from ZDT Sparam, 19.6, relate that during the encounter between the Prophet and Dyer and SR6B6*, the former answered thus the threat 1AV, 72. Below thy, the evil eye, P25F. Of. The following passage from Heliodoro, Theogenes, and Charleclea 1.140. Quoted by Tubelworthy, evil eye, P8, when Aaeoae looks at what is exxliat with an envious eye, he fills the surrounding atmosphere with a pernicious quality, and transmits his own envenomed exhalations into whatever is nearest to him. See above p. 414, 424 Daster Hoshang Memorial Volume of the Karap. With complete mindfulness I will look upon thee with both eyes and will utterly destroy thee. The distant Denig, 3.7. Claims that a friend can subjugate by a look, which is a contender with the enemy, and the Ganye Shayagdan 152 admonishes the pious man thus, "You should also know, that the boundless harm done by the infernal Gonmino is prevented by not exercising the three injurious faculties, which are, the sight of the eye, the hearing of the ear, and the demon of contention." No exposition of Iranian belief in the evil eye, not even the briefest, could be complete without the allusion to the counter-belief in the good eye, that is to say, in the influence of a steady glance upon all living creatures. The Zoroastrians had a special genius, named Sayoka, to whom they alluded as the genius of the good eye. Zarathustra, for instance, is reported by Vendidad 19.37. to have invoked the good Sayoka whose glance is far-reaching, and the Strdzhdhs speak of him as the good Sayoka, with the eyes of love. Besides the above quoted citations and that from the DDTLSTDNT 3.7. *, the existence of this belief is furthermore demonstrated by passages from the Zamid Yasht, Denig, and Farhang I Oim Evok. According to the prophecy contained in the Zamid Yasht, YT 19.94, Saoshyant will look upon the whole living world with the eyes, Doithradbia, of plenty, and his look, Dars, will deliver to immortality the whole living creation. The distant L Denig, 3.8, narrates that when the unwavering look of the Creator which was upon the coming of the evil spirit, was unmingled with the sight of an eye, he made etc., and the Farhang I Oim Evok, Hoshangji and Hangs ed. 2311, 64.1, has a fragment Ushtatm Ashabia, which Darmstetter translates, Le Bener Avek Ses. In conclusion, I may be permitted to mention the Zoroastrian belief that the Sagdid, the gaze of a dog, destroys the nasus that rush upon the dead body, and it prevents those who carry a corpse from becoming polluted. *1 Peshhotan db Sanjana. Ganye SHDT/Agn, Bombay, 18S5. 9 See also VD2 2.3.4. Sir. 1.3, S.8. etc. Of. Xmesteder, 99.100. 4 See above, on this page. S. Laza, 3.24. Fragment 54. VD 7.3. We 9 Turgi Arkel.S ed P 387, Phi. VDP 239, Sib. G.1.4 Sis, A.56.63.66.71.84.85, XO 10.12.32.38. IE/. 2.272 N Witchcraft in Zoroastrian Literature 425-4. Nail paring and hair cutting in connection with primitive beliefs. The custom of burning or burying the nail parings and hair cuttings was widely in vogue among the more primitive races, and has its foundation in the peculiar belief in sympathetic magic. As is well known, The main principle of sympathetic magic is, that an effect may be produced upon a particular subject by merely imitating it. Innumerable accounts of this belief are given by Fraser, Tyler, Lubbock, Dawson, and Atheist. The superstition is prevalent among savage and primitive races that an evil-disposed person can harm another by obtaining possession of some part of that person's body. This belief owes its origin to the peculiar conception of the soul. Primitive man conceives of the soul as a small entity which can be present in any of the separate parts of his body, such as the nails, hair, teeth, fingers, and even in his name. Believing, therefore, that injury to a SILE part of his body may mean destruction to his soul, primitive man is very anxious to prevent any portion of his frame from eomug into the possession of wicked persons, especially witches and sorcerers. There is hardly a race on the globe which does not believe in this superstition in some form or other, and which does not possess thrilling tales of the harm wrought by witches through the instrumentality of a person's hair or the parings of his nails. Find this superstition among the early Romans. Unguium dialis, says Gelgius, et capilli segmina subter arborum ficem terra operi unter. The cuttings of nails mid-hair of a priest of Jupiter must be buried under a tree of the auspicious kind. In the same manner, the Dutch believed in early times that hate cuttings should never be thrown into the street, for fear that they may be picked up by witch, who by this means can bewitch the person to whom it belonged. The early Danes, likewise, burned J. G. Fraser, the Leolden Lioe, E. B. Tyler, Earl Nachusleigh of Memkland, Sir John Lubbock. Origin of Civilization, JD.IW3 on, Australian Aborigines, Melbourne, 1*81. I am inclined to believe that the ancient Hebrew law forbidding the Jews to pronounce the real name of Jehovah is a direct consequence of the superstition, which finds its parallel in the German Lohengrin saga, where Lohengrin may remain among Mojay only as long as his real name is not known. Olliag Gellius, Coeti, Odyssey 10,15.15. B. I. Hotfe, the Orttiern Mythology S3, London 1851,1852. 54 426 Daster Hoshang Memorial Volume or buried the cuttings of their hair and nails, lest evil-disposed persons should exercise enchantment with them upon the person who had borne them. The lower classes in Ireland believe that human hair should not be burnt, but be buried, in the superstition that its owner will claim it at the resurrection. The Orthodox Jew of today always burns his nail parings, in order that no other person may take possession of them and prevent him from appearing with complete fingernails on the day of resurrection. In England there was a time when the nails were cut off by knives or scissors and thrown into the fire, for fear a witch might get them. A similar custom of burying the nail parings and clippings from the hair exists among the Zoroastrians, past and present, and its origin is explained in the Vendidad, Heimdation, Stiest id Stiest, and the Sad Dar. A large portion of the 17th Pargard of the Vendeld is devoted to this subject, and we find there the statement that a man who combs his hair or pares his nails and drops the parings into a hole or crack, commits a deadly sin whereby he offers up a sacrifice to the devas. The Zoroastrian is, therefore, urged to bury his hair or nails in a hole dug especially for this purpose and to recite certain prayers over them. The explanation given is that the nails or hair clippings may otherwise become spears, knives and weapons in the hands of the devas against the bird Ash 6 Zushta. In translating this Fargard, Darmstetter adds a note to the effect that the nails are usually cut in two and the fragments are put in a hole with the point directed towards the north, that is to say, against the breasts of the devas. In another canonical book, the Bundan, 19.19.20, the question of nail paring is incidentally dealt with. Find there a passage relating to this subject, which E. W. West renders as follows: nail paring, when not prayed over, is seized by the one Thorpe, Northern Mythology 2.Z72f. Notes and Queries 3d. Series, 10, 46, London, Elworthy, The Anili, p. 234. 235 416. 437 cf, also the following passage from Comedy of Ariorg 4. 5 Sister Dromio, Some divils ask but the peering for of one's nail, a rarh, a heis, a dop of bluje, a pin, a nut, a cherrystone, h for farther xin. Jail sje3. Erdala 1, L, Gei of Penum. 3 volumes L Ndui, IJ 91-1896, U *VD 17.1, Pilla v Venley Leal 17,1,11, and of Jackson, on some Arston superstitions. JAOS, 13. 59-61 SBE, 4192, and 2D ed. Witchcraft in Zoroastrian literature. 427 demons and wizards and shot like an arrow at the Ash-Sizusht bird, which is killed. Therefore the bird seizes and devours a nail paring, when prayed over, so that the demons may not control its use. When the spell is not uttered, then the bird does not devour the nails and the demons are able to commit an offense with it. The Shtiast Idishtiast 12,6, treats this matter by stating that no nail paring can be left unprayed over, for in that case it turns into weapons and equipments of the jinn demons, and the Sad Dar, 14.1-1, contains the following statement: when the nails are pared according to the custom, it is necessary to put the parings into a paper. And it is further necessary to take the srashas inwardly and to recite 3 Tamvarios. Afterwards one completes the baz in the manner etc. For Hormuzd, the good and propitious, has created a bird, which they call Ash-6 and they call it the bird of Bahman, they also call it the owl. And it eats the nails. It is altogether necessary that they do not leave them unbroken, for they would come into use as weapons of wizards. And if they fall into the midst of food, there is danger of pulmonary consumption. The above quoted passages show clearly that the Zoroastrians did not throw away their nail parings and hair cuttings, but buried them. And even though the reasons assigned for this custom and the ceremonies accompanying it are totally different from those of other races, there can be little doubt that this custom goes back eventually to the universal belief in sympathetic magic. 5 Noxious creatures. A recognition of the animal kingdom plays a conspicuous part in the savage beliefs of all races. Animals are either feared or roars hipped. As a rule, they are revered on account of the fear with which they imbue the mind of primitive man. The mythology and folklore of every race on the globe is full of horrible, hideous creatures who, by their demoniacal character, seem to exercise a peculiar power of fascination upon the minds of one Professor C0. Trowbridge of Columbia University, who is a close observer of the life of the owls, tells me that these animals are in the habit of spitting out in the shape of balls all the indigestible parts of food, CIO as the feathers and bones. These balls when washed by the weather become snow white and, mixed with the black fur, look like fingernails. Does not the fact that the ancient Iranians assigned to the owls the eating of nails, indicate that they too had observed this peculiarity of the owl pellet pi2 das versost fanik? Moki al volt jame meft, livery race has its inimical tfi tires, legendary or real, tifpo wafnat looks with that same sort of physical shrinking. Among the many mythical monstefs, the ancient Hindu Aryans feared Rakshasas and Sarvaras, the Greeks dreaded their chimers, hydras, harpies and sirens, the Anglo-Saxons and Slavs th6 werewolf, the Arabs abhorred the jinns, and among the beasts supposedly immemorial to mankind, the Hebrews fear the serpent, the Iran Hindu holds the tiger in superstitious awe and ls6 vs via * the vampire, and the Arab dreads the mere sight of wf. In the same way the Iranian has, besides the mythical Serdbarthandarab and the Gambar, his real noxious creatures, called craftsfras, whom H dreads and strives to extirpate. Of the Enchia animal kingdom the Fo bowing, according to the testimony of the Zcode No. 10 writings, were classified as noxious creatures, the mouse, the weevil, the tortoise, the frog, the lizard, the scorpion, the S-registered trademark A/K number, Ike worm, the ant, the locust, the spider, the gnat, the toad, and louse. Associated with them are, the bear, the ape, the cat, the wolf, and the hawk. These creaties are said by Hunda Msht, 2D.L3v, to dwell chiefly in the Imitic river, and their exosfenkama. According to the Jain Sfendma, 3, was to last until Tte Teddy day of resurrection. In many instances, as in the ease of the Emuzej spider and the louse, the aversion of the Zoroastrians T6 Tfes copyright Krasifu residential is shared by the other races. THFE Distinctive 1 MKHVD 1.3.T, 7.IE, 14.5.6, 17.3, BJ. 3.15, L registered trademark I2. B28. DFC 7.59, 62. 3. SIP. 8.19, SD43. IIO. Etc. lim.xa.nitrialeoist.clsc Madame P19. Liated by L-word lie, Z7IEEWII, P15. From Mand real it be that the Romans were very much afraid of granshoppers. He says, Mantis luist 8 eq fini iq 8 e in stipules in acetonra, phi quad I dean pexerit animal proteinox, illic nipium pro a I should oisli dash liafk I over beowiful, Japhoritis te tid. I heg j also, simultaneously with the Greek regarja the wolf with a superstitious fear, as is shown by the following passages quoted from Theo, Crit 8, Virgil, and Pliave, okpht1 iegx and, Ivico eias, epms tin 6 I apply loi epic the scritus, will. 14.22 Vox quoque morum ito flegit igisa, hler mol ht and tiaf ve prite. Virgil, Ecta 9. In it meek no chi creditor liporum vicens esse noxius, tumc mini, corn coiltioigelenter, ad imera ad prasens, fian j, mid, nat 834. The Latin pair ved, tu opus tibi visua est. Commonly used when a person becomes suddenly silent, may be traced back to the superstition. Witchcraft in Zoroastrian literature for dread of the snake and the scorpion among most nations is too well known to dwell upon. According to the Zoroastrian conception, the craftstres or noxious creatures were created by Ngramanyith, and their origin is of such a character that it involves sorcery and witchcraft. The Bimedation, 3.15, for instance, relates that Ahriman created and diffused deadly creatures over the earth, such as snakes, scorpions, frogs, and lizards, so that, in the words of West's rendering, not even as much as the point of a needle was free from them, and the same book states on another occasion, BD 18.2, that the evil spirit formed in the ocean a lizard in order to injure Ham. THQ Datist Nidenig, 37.52, relates how the fiend made as leaders noxious creatures of gloomy places for producing stinging and causing injury, and the Vended D, while recounting the creations of Ngramanya, says that he also created the serpent in the river, the locust that brings death unto cattle and plants, and the ants. According to a different tradition, the craftstres were the offspring of sorcerers and witches. The Kvituk Das, which was cited above, relates that when Yuma and Yumak married a witch and demon respectively, they gave birth to the bear, ape, Gondarup, G6s pound I. Bar, the tortoise, cat, hawk, frog, weevil, and many other noxious creatures. These creatures were said to be of a wicked disposition and extremely harmful. According to Vendid, 17.3, some of them eat up the corn in the fields and the clothes in the wardrobe, and this statement gives an idea of the nature of these pests. The Dinkard, 7.5.8, calls them the terrors of corn and adversarious of animals. Their existence is so painful to the earth that, according to Ishtdiast 13.19, the fourth discomfort of the earth is from the holes of noxious creatures, and, in the words of the Din Imandi I Kairat, 5.8, 6.10. The land from which the burrows of noxious creatures are extirpated, is happier. The Bunda Ehn, finally, 19.7, attributes to them vile corruptions of every kind. How much the Zoroastrians feared and abhorred these unclean creatures is demonstrated by the fact that they were said to be used as instruments of punishment in afterlife. IBD 1.2.4.6 BW West, 1 Hemir HNG of KHVMK DOS, c. 18.418-419. Everywhere in 4S0 Daster Hoshang Memorial Volume Hell, says the Art Verdf Namak, even the lesser noxious creatures are as high as mountains, and they so tear, seize, and worry the souls of the wicked, as would be unworthy of a dog / as a consequence of the deep aversion which the ancient Iranians had for noxious creatures. They tried to destroy them and regarded the killing of craftsdress as an act of religious merit. The Shtayist Idishtayist, 20.5, for example, states that in order to perform good works, one must kill noxious creatures. Consequently, the extirpation of craftsdress became a commonly accepted means of repenting and atoning for sins and offenses. The Vendai, 14.5.6, says that he who commits the sin of slaying a water dog, shall atone for it by killing 10,000 snakes of those that go upon the belly, 10,000 carpus jakatsai, 10,000 tortoises, 10,000 land frogs, 10,000 water frogs, 10,000 corn-carrying ants, 10,000 ants of the small, venomous, mischievous kind, 10,000 worms and 10,000 raging flies. The Shtayist Idishtayist, moreover, advocates the killing of a lizard or scorpion as an act of penance for a sin committed against water *, and it recommends that a menstruous woman, who washes her hands with a liquid other than the urine of a bull, shall destroy 200 noxious creatures. The Saddar, 43.1-10, dwells at length upon the necessity of destroying craftsdress, and it tabulates a detailed list showing the respective value attached to the slaying of different noxious creatures. Thus the killing of a frog is equal to the payment of 200 dirhams, that of a snake or scorpion is equal to the slaying of an apostate, the smiting of a flying ant equals the reciting of prayers for 10 days, the killing of a common ant equals the recitation of the H6 Rmuzd Yasht, and the extirpation of a mouse is an equivalent for the slaying of 4 lions. In what high esteem the exterminators of craftsdress were held, is described to us by the Art Vtrdf and Mach. I saw, says the pious Verdf, the souls of those who killed many noxious creatures in this world, whereby the prosperity of the waters, and sacred fires and trees was increased, and they were exalted and adorned. *1 AV 18.12.13 cf also AV.19.1-4. 34.127, 25.126. 28, 29, 32, 34, 37, 45, 47, 56, 69, 71, 73, 81, 86, 89, 90. Sis. 8.19, Sis. 3.214 AV 13.11. 1. Witchcraft in Zoroastrian literature. 431 Mortal man is not the only participant in the eternal struggle against noxious creatures. The DT and DT Mathundi T Kairat Q2, I5.S6, relates that by pouring holy water into the sea the mythical Gopadisha killed many noxious creatures, and, according to other testimonies, the stars Tishtraya and Venant destroyed many craftsdress. Even beasts were arrayed in this struggle against their fellow creatures. The BMDAMSHN / 9. 21-28, states that certain beasts and birds were created in special opposition to noxious creatures. The white falcon, for example, was against the winged serpent, the magpie counteracts the locust, and the hedgehog destroys corn-carrying ants by voiding urine into their nests. The mere horn of the three-legged S, Sagistfunda MSHN, / 9. 7-9. 17, vanquishes and dissipates the corruption due to the efforts of noxious creatures, and his cry, like that of the oxfish, makes craftsdress cast their young. According to the Dina Imahij 4 Kairat, furthermore, the carfish struggles with the frog and other noxious creatures, in order to keep them away from the lake Varkash, Av Vaurakasha. It was also believed that certain spells were able to extirpate noxious creatures, but they will be treated below as I have reserved a special chapter for the discussion of spells and exorcisms. 6. Miscellaneous beliefs. Besides the above discussed Zoroastrian traditions and customs that are connected in some form or other with the practice of witchcraft, the followers of the Prophet of Iran have a number of beliefs which may seem peculiar to those who are not familiar with the principles of folklore and origins of primitive faiths. These beliefs, expressed by Mazdaism in the form of sacred laws and commandments, are explained to be of a religious character. There can be little doubt, however, that their origin goes back to the superstitious practices of primitive man. The more surely IDK 7.5.8, moreover, says that Zarathustra disclosed to Mankhamel the rights of counteracting wolves and other noxious Kriya area and of confining hail, spiders, and locusts. BL 7.5. YT 21.1, ZSP 6.4.5.9.14 CF also Cis 10.3112-20 and 8D 57.14 MKH 62.30 of BD 18.2-6. For further references to noxious creatures see YS 19.1, May 9, 34. 35.14. BD 16.11, BD 3.9. 7.13, 13.16, 28.1, DK 7.1. 60, DD 17.16, 18.3, SG 3,21, 579, 14.17-22. 56, CIS 19.9, 80.18, ZSP 2.9, Padded Irdnig 7, JDM DSP and Mach 7.9, etc. 432 Dastub Hashang Memorial Volume. Is this the case, since some of them are prevalent among races that are neither linguistically nor culturally related to the Iranians? By far the most interesting of these beliefs, held by every true believer of Zoroastrianism, is the conviction that libations and offerings are not to be performed at night time, and that after sunset no food is to be cast away towards the north without reciting certain prayers. The sacred books of the Parsis contain a number of references to this belief. Venddd 7.79 claims that he who offers up libations in the dead of night, sins against righteousness, and the Narangistan upholds this contention by stating that he who offers libations to the good waters after sunset or before sunrise does no better deed than if he should cast them downright into the jaws of venomous snakes. The Shdiast Idishdiast, 9.8, 12.17.18, warns the faithful not to cast away after sunset to north, wine, aromatic herbs, nor any other food without reciting one Yathdahuvario, and it forbids the pious even to draw water from a well at night time or to eat in the dark. The Saddar.L2 claims that it is not proper to pour away water at night to the north without reciting the Yathdahuvarid. In justifying these restrictions imposed upon the followers of the Zoroastrian creed, the sacred writings give them a religious coloring, and this is all the more natural in a religion in which the sun and light hold so prominent a place. They explain that demons may benefit by these actions, owing to the fact that their quarters are in the northern regions, where hell is situated, and that their power is greater at night time. The texts commonly cite the case of Mashi Ni, the first woman, who was also the first to pour liquid matter to the north. If we dispense with this explanation prompted by purely religious tendencies, and look somewhat deeper into the probable origin of this belief, we can hardly fail to see its primitive origin. Apart from the fact that it contains the perfectly common sense pt that something unclean may be drunk, if the water be drawn I Dharmastedi, ECJL 3.111, 48, Jackson, on some Aistan superstitions, Jags. 13.59-61 1 VD 19.1, BD 1S.8. DK 9.19,1-2. Cis. 10.7. SD 80.3. Asterisk BD, 15.19. Witchcraft in Zoroastrian literature 433 In the dark, It also exemplifies a very old and widespread superstition, characteristic of every primitive race, namely, the natural and childlike dread of the dark. This superstition actuated many races, all over the world, to prevent their members from performing certain actions at certain periods of the night, lest they meet with harm. The Aryan Code of Laws, for example, forbids the partaking of food at twilight, and this regulation, similar in character and purpose to the Zoroastrian commandments, vividly suggests the idea that their enactment must have antedated the establishment of Hinduism and Mazdaism in these two countries, and must consequently have been prompted by the above-mentioned superstitious belief. That the Zoroastrian laws of a seemingly religious nature are superstitious or natural in their origin, is further demonstrated by the frequent command, boycott in the sacred writings, to ignite and burn a fire at night in the house that shelters a pregnant woman or a newly born child. The Shti/Ast 12.4.7.11.12, recommends the keeping up of a fire or light in the house of a pregnant woman or newly born child, and even forbids, in the words of West's rendering, labor of child at night, except by the reflection of the stars, moon, or a fire, explaining that the evil spirits, demons, and witches, who exercise a greater power in the dark, are kept away by the radiance of a burning light. The same sentiment is expressed by the Dinhart, 8.38.6, and the Sad-Dar, 16.1-4, and in order to enforce the observance of this law, the sacred books state that when Dutog, the mother of the prophet, became pregnant, 150 demons tried each night to enter her house intent upon injuring her and her embryo, but were always kept away by the light and fire maintained in that house. This anxiety of the Iranian lawmakers to keep a continual fire in the house of a pregnant woman or a newly born child, was actuated by the knowledge gained from the experience of their more savage ancestors, that at night time the fire was a good substitute for the broad daylight. Every man, no matter how primitive he may be, knows very well that light and fire are terrifying and abhorrent to many animals and wild beasts. If we add to this the man 4.55. JC above, p. 410, b5 434 Daster Hoshang Memorial Volume universally established fact that all evil spirits of a deadly nature are assigned by primitive man the shape of beasts or monsters, we will see at once that the Ahura Mazdaean law of protecting pregnant women and their young offspring against the machinations of ill-natured beings by means of fire, is another trace of the savage, pre-Zoroastrian beliefs. Another remnant of the primitive faith, probably found by Mazdaism in ancient Iran and adopted in its religious system, is the holiness accorded to certain animals. As an illustration of this, we may note that Zoroastrianism holds the cock in sacred veneration. The Vendad, 18.15, calls him the bird of Sriracha, and says that he lifts his voice against the mighty dawn. According to Bundelshn, 19.33, he was created in opposition to demons and wizards, warning men against the seduction of the demoness of lethargy. His crowing is said to protect the house from wizards and witches, and consequently the Shtiast Idishtiast, 10.30, and the /Sakzar, 32.1-5, forbid the killing of a cock that crows unseasonably, and even the slaying of a crowing hen. By forbidding the slaying of a crowing hen, Zoroastrianism strikes at a very widespread superstition, according to which the crowing of a female fowl, or rather the attempt at it, is a foreboding of ill luck to the owner. Consequently a hen that crows, is quickly killed, the idea being that taking her life will avert the impending danger. On the other hand, Mazdaism upholds the ancient belief in the sacredness of the cock prevalent among many ancient and modern races. It is a peculiarity of the mind of primitive man, easy to explain, to worship certain animals, or trees, above others, and to elevate them to the position of gods. This high veneration has two sources. Either primitive man, as is in the case of many savage races, dreads the animal exceedingly, and, in order to propitiate it, accords to it great esteem by choosing it avr drafaras he whjc's phi st. Bartholomew, Air. IVB. Colonel 85. See also Jackson on, Same assistant superstitions, JAOS, 13.50 to 61 and JJ Modi. The cock as a sacred bird in ancient Iran. 3. A certain traveler relates the following interesting story. On entering a farmhouse in Somersetshire recently, I saw on the table a jauty fowl, plump fowl, all picked and trussed ready for cooking. The farmer's wife explained to me that her husband, on seeing the hen in the yard in the act of crowing, caught her at once and killed her without delay. Wellington, Weekly T-Jews, June 13.1889, quoted by Elworthy, TGFUI, P95F. Witchcraft in Zoroastrian literature 435 as his totem or worshipping it as sacred, like Moses' serpents, or else he appreciates its good qualities and services, and accords it excellent honors, as in the case of Apis among the Egyptians, or the goose among the Romans. Among the ancients the cock was regarded as a sacred animal, being especially consecrated to sun deities like Osiris, Serapis, Jupiter, and Apollo. Among the Romans he was also the symbol of Mercury, denoting vigilance. They also believed that the lion is terrified on seeing the crest or hearing the crowing of a cock. In the Middle Ages, and even today, the cock was regarded as a watchful guardian, who drives away the fiercest beasts and even ghosts, and it soon became a very appropriate symbol on amulets like the Gulmarida and Manopantia*. Many races of today believe that the cock's eye is very powerful as an amulet, and that all demons with lions' heads vanish instantly, when the cock or his image is presented to them. Even Christianity recognizes the universal belief in the singular power of the cock. Many churches still have a so-called weathercock on their highest tower, and although the explanations offered today for this peculiar custom differ widely, it is highly probable that they were originally placed there with the intention of keeping away malicious Ariatudes from sacred buildings. That the ancient Iranians, as other primitive races, held certain animals in sacred veneration, is further demonstrated by a number of passages in the Zoroastrian scriptures which bear on this subject. The Vendid, for example, accords great reverence to the 4 kinds of dogs: the house dog, the shepherd dog, the hunting dog, and the so-called Vohunazga or blood dog, and it imposes heavy penalties for the slaying of these animals. The Bundishan 1 etni hutail, tam saiva kin ll, rotarum orb sarumakti, syuriski inanes et galanasarum oristii, kantiski et lamis terant, said Raxian igni. Pliny, Isat. History 8.19. 2 Hamlet 1.1. 147 The Simaruta, or more properly the Oias de Rata, Sprigo, Rue, is an amulet used today in Naples for the protection against the fasciation of mothers and newborn infants. It usually consists of a or scent, a hand, yuki, a serpent, a fish, a lotus and a cock. Elworthy, The Evil Eye, p. 344.355. 1. The Manopantia is an ancient Roman amulet of the same character and purpose as the Cte art-L-word by, The Evil Eye, p. 343. 5. Bulworthy, T.G. Lickle, p. 354. VD 13.1 to 52, cf. also AV. 48, SD 38.1 to 8. And above p. 430. 436 Daster Hoshang Memorial Volume A, 19.35, says of the dog, that his barking destroys pain and his flesh and fat are good remedies against pain and decay. The Vengbra, the hedgehog, too was regarded as a sacred animal. The Pharaoh/Ajaj, 13.3, states that he who kills a Vengbra slays his own soul for 9 generations, and cannot find a way over the Chinvat bridge of judgment hereafter, unless he has atoned, while alive, for this sin. And the Bilda Mshn, 19.28, the Shtiest /0. 3112.20, A.Nd. The Sad Dar, 67.1, forbid the slaying of this animal because he is very beneficent to the creation of Ahura Mazda by destroying the corn-carrying ants. Another sacred animal was the raven. The following quotation from Yasht 14. 34 feet. In Dharmastiter's rendering, will at once convince us of this fact. Zarathustra asked Ahura Mazda, if I have a curse thrown upon me, a spell told upon me by the many men who hate me, what is the remedy for it? Ahura Mazda answered, take thou a feather of that bird, the raven, and with that feather thou shalt rub thy own body, with that feather thou shalt curse back thy own enemies. If a man holds a bone of that strong bird, or a feather of that strong bird, no one can smite or turn to flight that fortunate man. The feather of that bird of birds brings him help, it brings unto him the homage of men, it maintains in him his glory. All tremble before him who holds the feather, etc. Sacredness was also accorded to the legendary three-legged ass, whose cry, according to Build MSHN 19.19, makes all female water creatures of Ahura Mazda pregnant, and whose bray makes all pregnant noxious creatures cast their young. The same effective quality is attributed to the cry of an ox and car, fish. The cries of these two animals, as well as the voice of a righteous man who was struck accidentally, according to Bundach 28.41, keep away the evil spirit. There are a few traditions among the Zoroastrians which the present writer is at a loss to explain from any other standpoint than that taken by the Holy Scriptures themselves. One of them is the importance attached to the cutting of a toothpick without RYS. 42 star. BJ. 19.17, for OTUAR sacred animals. See the rest of BD 19. Witchcraft in 20 R Zoroastrian literature 437 retaining the bark. The Esmayist Idishdiast, 10.20. 1213, says, that a toothpick is to be cut out clear of bark, because when a pregnant woman puts her foot on it, she is apprehensive about its being dead matter, and the Saddar, 17.1-2, amplifies this passage by making the following statement: when they cut a toothpick, they should not retain the bark, for if a small piece of bark cast away after having been applied to the teeth, is tread upon by a pregnant woman, the child in her womb might come to harm. All that the student of primitive culture can gather from these two passages, apart from the natural conclusion that bark would be annoying in a toothpick, is the dimly conveyed idea, that the bark of a tree, after having been once applied to the teeth, becomes a means of contamination. Why the bark only assumes such a negative quality, and why pregnant women alone ought to avoid stepping on such matter, is not evident. I know of no other custom resembling in the least this Zoroastrian injunction, and am inclined to believe that this peculiar usage goes back to some primitive Iranian custom not understood, and consequently misinterpreted by Mazdaism. Another curious ordinance in the Zoroastrian religious system is the injunction imposed upon every true believer not to void water or evacuate phthisis while standing or walking. The Vendid attaches great importance to this law. In discussing this subject, VD 18.40.41, Phi. VD 18.98, it puts the following words into the mouth of the Druj: he is the second of my males, who making water lets it fall along the upper forepart of his foot. That man makes me conceive progeny as other males make their females conceive by their seed. As a remedy against this danger, the same passage further on, VD 18.43, enjoins that the offender shall rise, and stepping forth 3 paces further off shall say 3 Ahanavaryas, 2 Humatensim, 3 Hukshathartam, then chant the Amnavarya, and finally offer up Wanyan Hdtdm. The Dalgard, 9.19.1, similarly forbids the voiding of urine while standing, and the Dindimandi 4 Kairat, 2.39, warns the faithful that by this action the demons will drag him to hell. The Shdayast Idishdayast, 10.5, and the Saddar, 56. 1, mention the same I of. The following passage from Strabo 15.3.14. The Persians sacrifice dice rently to fire and to water. To fire by putting on it dry logs without the bark, 438 tons, a stub hosha.ng Memorial Volume Restriction, and Art VTRDF and Mach, 25.1-6, says that those who walk without shoes, run about uncovered, make water on the foot, and perform other demon service, are gnawed in afterlife by noxious creatures. This restraint is commonly explained to have been prompted by a desire to avoid polluting a larger space of ground than was absolutely necessary, and is consequently one of the many laws proving the Zoroastrian conception of the holiness of Mother Earth. The same custom was practiced among the Indian Aryans who were forbidden by the Code of Manu, 4.47. To void feces and urine while walking or standing. Although the earth, as the producer, was looked upon as sacred by quite a number of other races, notably the ancient Greeks and the South African Zulus, none of them practiced a custom similar to that of the Indo-Iranians, who therefore seem to hold a unique position in this respect. An additional odd restriction imposed upon the Parsis is the prohibition of walking with one boot or walking barefoot. The Bundestion, 28.13, for instance, calls the walking in one boot a sin, whereby the demon Tapravi is propitiated, and the Dinti Mathundi I Kairat, 2.3537, claims that it is possible to maintain prosperity of the body without injury to the soul by not walking with one boot. In the same manner, the Shtayist Idishtayist, 4.12, 10.12, states that walking without boots constitutes a Tandpdar sin, which ought to be avoided because the boot prevents a person who had stepped on dead matter from becoming polluted. The Saddar, 44.1-2, also forbids putting the foot bare upon the ground, because injury might happen to the angel Spendarmid, the personification of the earth. This custom, although its meaning is not very clear, seems to have the same object in view as the preceding one, the desire, sacred to every Zoroastrian, to keep the earth uncontaminated and pure. It also had an important hygienic aspect, as plague in India, and doubtless also in Iran, is so frequently transferred through the barefoot. 1J. W. West, Talisai Texts, SBE. 34.12.11.1, 37.207.n.2. Asmi Pahlavi commentators, notably Unrahohangji, translate Tli passage Rkfuridiji to this practice as walking without boots. They claim that the Pahlavi word a-muk, one boot, is a mistake for aflmuk, without boots. C. W. West, Pahlavi Texts, SBE. 6.288.n5, cf. also DK 9.9.1, Witchcraft in Zoroastrian Literature : 439. Superstitious in origin is also the sacred tradition, adhered to by every believer of Mazdaism, of wearing the sacred girdle and the shirt, the visible tokens of one's allegiance to the teachings of Zarathustra. The sacred girdle, kusti, is a hollow cylindrical string, the warp of which consists of 72 threads and the weft of one unbroken thread, and it should encircle the body 3 times. The shirt, sudra or satard, is a muslin tunic with short sleeves that does not reach lower than the hips, with a small pocket at the opening in front of the shirt, the so-called giridan or hisal karfa, the pocket for good deeds. According to tradition, anyone who transgresses the law of wearing these 2 garments, commits a sin known as the sin of Vishdildrishna, the walking about uncovered. The Vend, Fav example, states that the man, or woman, of more than 15 years of age, who walks without the sacred girdle or shirt, is the 4th male to make the Druj pregnant, committing thereby a sin for which there is no means of undoing it, and the same work states on another occasion that he who for 3 springs does not wear the sacred girdle brings in the power of death. The Dind for Maindi Kairat, 2. 35, warns the faithful not to commit the sin of running about uncovered, and the Shtayist Idishtayist, 4. 10, 10. 13, says that running about uncovered constitutes a farmdan or tandpilhar crime. The Saddar, 10, 46. 1, claims that it is incumbent on all those of the good religion, men or women, who have attained to 15 years, to wear the sacred thread girdle, and that those who do this are out of the department of Araman and in the department of H6 Rmuzd. The Dnkard, 9. 9.1, says that by walking about ungirdled one propitiates the demons Andar and S6 Var, who according to Bindishan 28. 29 oppose the wearing of the kusti and sudra, and the Dastanaidenic devotes an entire chapter, 39, to the explanation of the necessity of wearing these two garments. The sudra and kusti are explained by Das Terjamespjiasana as designed to protect the body and to benefit the soul of the person who wears them, and by Ida Terjam Jamaspjiasana, the Navjot ceremony. Bombay, 1887. Cf. also Dharmastr Laza. 2.243.N.L3. VD 18.54.575. VD 18.115. VD 18.9. Phi, VD 5.167. 7.48, the Navjot ceremony, P5. 440 Dastu Hashang Memo Eel Volume the Sad Dar, 10, to make him a participator in the merit of all the good deeds performed all over the Zoroastrian world. One cannot help comparing the Zoroastrian sacred girdle and shirt in certain respects with the four-cornered garment, and the prayer shawl of the Hebrews. The four-cornered garment, Arba Kenfat, is a rectangular piece of cloth with an aperture sufficient to let it slip over the head, so that a part of it falls in front and a part behind the body. To its four corners there are attached fringes, tzitzit, consisting of 4 threads of white wool, and 4 threads of blue wool. It is worn today as an undergarment, and in the medieval ages it was looked upon as some kind of badge whereby the Jew was recognized and distinguished from the Gentile. In some countries, notably in Russia, it is believed that this garment averts the evil eye. The second of these vestments just mentioned is the prayer shawl, or talith. It is likewise a mantle with fringes on the 4 corners, but it is worn over the garments. It is used by men after they are married, and, in modern times, it is donned by boys after their confirmation. The Kabbalists considered this mantle as a special garment for the service of God, intended to inspire awe and reverence for God during the prayers in our own days. Many an Orthodox Jew, when questioned about the reason for wearing the talith and arha kenfat, will unhesitatingly answer that they are worn as a protection against shadim, ill-disposed demons, voicing thereby unconcealably the probable reason for adding the fringes to these garments. It is a known fact, dealt with extensively by Otto John, that colored threads play an important part in the belief in Sor Husiri. Is not familiar with the universal device of mothers tying threads of different colors around the fingers, wrists, or necks of infants in order to protect them against the power of fascination. May we not regard the Zoroastrian kusti, the girdle consisting of many threads, as another example of the Iranian superstitious belief in fascination, even though the girdle is made of white threads only? The last of the Zoroastrian peculiar beliefs which I wish to T7TE Jewish Encyclopedia, 2.75. New York, 1902. The Jewish Encyclopedia 11.678. Wie den Oberglaulen des Bosen Peaks iei den Alien, p. 42. In Burr, D. Sachs. OES, D. VISA, Fu MST, Class, Leipzig, 1865. Witchcraft in Zoroastrian literature 441. Mention is that associated with the sin usually called dressed diangeliashia, or the eagerness for chattering, and which is committed by talking while eating, praying, or at any other time when a murmured prayer has been taken inwardly and is not yet spoken out. The sinful part arises from breaking the spell of the inward prayer VDJ. There are many passages referring to this transgression. The Binkard, 9.9.2, 9.19.1, 8.43.37, for example, says that he who eats or drinks chattering, commits a sin toward Kurdad and Amurdad and delights the demons by making them pregnant. The Bina 4 Maindy T Kamrat, 2.33.34, advises not to indulge in unseasonable chatter, so that no serious harm may happen unto the archangels Horvadem and Amerot and D, and the Batktanai Denig, 79.8, calls the chattering meal a very grievous sin. TMSLLYI/IEARTVL Namak, 23, states that he who devours talkatively will always be hungry and thirsty in the world hereafter, and that he will constantly tear his own hair and beard, devour blood, and cast foam from his mouth. This Zoroastrian law against talking while eating or drinking is obviously of a purely sanitary origin and substantiates the statement made in one of the previous chapters, that Mazdaism gave as much attention to the bodily welfare as to the spiritual well-being of its followers. The mere fact that a transgression of this law meant some injury to Horvatfid, av Orvat, the personification of health, shows it to have been prompted by a desire to prevent the possibility of some physical danger, incurred by persons who talk while eating or drinking. It may be interesting to note that the same custom is observed by the East European Jews, who regard talking while eating fish, for example, as a semi-religious sin. On the other hand, the law against talking while praying, is of a religious character and is universally observed. The Jews, for example, are strictly forbidden to chatter before and after certain prayers during their long religious services. The above discussed Zoroastrian beliefs and customs prove distinctly that Mazdaism, as the other great religions, was subject to the universal necessity of respecting and reckoning with E.W.West, polyit.hs, shk. u//.n/ of. Also cis, 4,9. 5. 56 see above p. 421. 442 Daster Hoshang Memorial Volume Primitive Beliefs. Just as Judaism, Christianity, and Mohammedanism did not find it expedient to destroy utterly some of the savage practices and superstitions of the aboriginal Canaanites, Romans, Teutons and Arabs respectively, so also Zoroastrianism had to yield to many primitive Indo-Iranian beliefs, only modifying and adopting them to the high spiritual standard of its religious conceptions. 7 Spells and Exorcisms. The belief in the power of magic awakened everywhere a desire to counteract and diminish its injurious effects. The desire, common to all races and ages, soon culminated in an intricate system of protective arts, which may be divided into 2 distinct classes: first, the written formulas of many sorts, and second, the spoken words or actions, all tending to the same end. Of the first kind, known as written formulas, the Zoroastrian literature gives no evidence whatsoever. The second group, however, is well represented and very often alluded to. Besides the general statement of the Dinkart, 8.42.1, that the Varistan section of the Sikdum Nask contained particulars about bringing remedies to a person who had been rendered sickly by a wizard, there are other references showing the existence of spells and charms and other protective means among the ancient Iranians. According to the Ipzan treatise Jadenspi, for example, the hero Irdun learned from God certain charms, mystic formulas, remedies, etc. With this passage we may compare the following reference in Vend 20.3, Thrida asked and obtained from Kshathra various remedies to withstand the diseases, rottenness, and infection, which Ungramenu had created against the bodies of mortals. According to the canonical texts, Zarathustra himself is said to have been familiar with remedies against sorcery and witchcraft. Dinkart 7.5.8.9, for instance, states that he disclosed to mankind the rites of driving out pestilence, overpowering the demon and witch, of disabling sorcery and witchcraft and curing diseases, of counteracting wolves and other noxious creatures, of liberating rain and of confining hail, spiders, locusts, and other terrors of corn and plants, and adversaries of animals. J. J. Modi, Jadnitz before L. Witchcraft in Zoroastrian literature. 443 of the many spells believed by the Zoroastrians to counteract magic, the most powerful are unquestionably the Aryaman Prayer Aryama Ishya, the 54th HD of the Yasna, and the Ashavahishta. The Ardibisht Yasht, YT. 3, calls the Aryama is %c, the greatest, the best of spells, the very best of spells, the fairest of spells, the very fairest of spells, the fearful one among spells, the most fearful of all spells, the firm one amongst spells, the firmest of all spells, the victorious amongst spells, the most victorious of all spells, the healing one amongst spells, the best healing of all spells, and it says of the Ashavahishta and the Aryaman prayer that they smite down the strength of all the creatures of Ngramenu, of the Whitus and Parak S, of the brood of the snake, of the brood of the wolf, and of the brood of the two-legged. They smite pride, scorn, hot fever, slander, discord and the evil eye. They smite the most lying words of falsehood, they smite the Jahi, addicted to Y2 and others. The Ashi Yasht, YT. 17.20, in speaking of the Ashavahishta, says that it burns Ngramenu as if it were melting brass, and Yasna 61.1-3. States that the Ashavahisht, and the Yang MFFDTDM, smite the fiends, the Kavardhas and Kawarides, the Kayadhas and the Kayades, the Zandas and Whitus. So much for the power of these texts as spells. Another efficacious formula is the Ahunavar, Ahanavarya prayer, the Ahunavar or Anavar, which is the most sacred formula of the Mazda worshippers as is well known. It consists of 21 words, forming 3 metrical lines of 16 syllables, and begins with the words Yatmam Varid. The Srash Yashtafdukt, YT. 11.3, speaks of the Ahanavarya as the best fiend smiter among all spells. Vendidem 9.27. Terms its composition the victorious, most healing words and the Shtayast Idishtayast, 19.14, says that it is greater and more powerful than everything in the Vesta as to rivers, wholesomeness and protection. Its origin is divine, for Yasna 19.3. Relates that Ahura Mazda was the first one to recite the Ahanavarya before the sky, waters, land, cattle, plants, and fire, before the holy man and devas, pronouncing it as the best spell and 1 YT. 3.5.ff 13 pound e, of. Also VD 20,913. 3L.L8 FL 22.20 FF, ABW West, Paldor I Leoitz, SBE. 24.65.N.3444 Daster Hoshang Memorial Volume causing it to have its effects / both the Bundation, January 21, 22, and the selections of Stspar M, 1.20, relate that when Ahura Mazda recited this prayer the evil spirit became confounded and fell back to gloomy darkness. Ngramenu himself is reported to have complained that Zarathustra smites him with the Ahanavarya as strong a weapon as a stone big as a house *, and the Tagart mentions other fiends that were destroyed by a mere recitation of this formula. The statement of I.N.A.R. July 4, 38. Is that when Zarathustra chanted the Ahunavar, the demon bud, the secret moving pestilence, and the deceiver were confounded and rushed away, and it states on another occasion, DK 7.4.61, that the Ahunavar, when uttered aloud by the prophet, annihilated the fiend and caused Shmok, the Karap, to rush away. In the words of Yasna 61.1-3, the Ahimavaria was a good spell against the Kavardhas and Kayadhas, Zandas, and Yadis. There are many other beliefs associated with the idea of the protective power of the J-Amna FFLZVYFF. According to the Shayist Lashtayist, 19.9, for instance, 9 Yath-Dahuvarids recited by the plowman while sowing corn, diminish the mischief of the noxious creatures, while the Dinkard, 7.1.12, claims that 2 Ahanavars are sufficient to keep away from the corn the demons and fiends. Reciting the Ahuvarya while casting away towards north, wine and food after sunset prevents the demons from benefiting by this action / as they otherwise would according to the superstition discussed above, and in the words of Vend 17.6.7 the uttering of a certain number of Ahanavaryas in connection with another formula while putting the hair cuttings or nail parings into a hole, prevents the demons from using these parings as a weapon against the bird Ashtzushta. Lastly, 5 Yathahuvarids, says the Shtayist Idishtayist, 19.5, are used in order to expel a fiend. The third of the powerful Zoroastrian spells is the uttering of the many names of Ahura Mazda. Yasht 1.1-4, relates that one day Zarathustra asked Ahura Mazda thus, "What of the holy word, Ahura, is the strongest? What is the most victorious?" 1 YB, 19.15. YT. 17.20, of VD 19.9. 3 see also above P 416, SD 30.1,2. Cis. Number .8, 10.7, 18.18, DK, 9.19.1-2. See also P 432 above. See below P 447. See also Cis. 12.6, Witchcraft in Zoroastrian literature 445. What is the most glorious? What is the most effective? What is the most fiend smiting? What is the most healing? What destroyeth best the malice of devas and men? What maketh the material world best come to the fulfillment of its wishes? What freeth the material of world B3 equals T from IHE anxieties of the heart? Whereupon Ahura Mazda is port to have answered, our name, Spitama Zarathustra, who are the names of the Amishas Spentas, that is the strong part of the holy word. And a little later, the same Yasht, 7 tons 1.10 to 11, 17.20, makes Ahura Mazda say, if you want to withstand the malice of the Iphiatus and Parak and Kavas and Karpans, of the two-legged ruffians and of the two-legged Ashimoas, of the four-legged wolves and of the hordes with wide fronts and many spears, then recite these my names every day and night. The names of the Amishas Spentas are likewise considered to serve as a protective medium against the power of witchcraft. The Cord Yasht, YT 4.7, distinctly says that the names of the Amishas Spentas smite men turned to Nasus by the Brujas, and the seed and kin of the Karpans, and it seriously warns the believer not to disclose this spell to anyone who is not a member of the immediate family. Of the 6 Amishas Spentas, the name of Slashuriafa, in particular, is regarded as an especially good spell. According to Yasht 4.2, he woe against the thousands of devas, against the 10,000s often thousands, against their numberless myriads, invokes the name of Orvatlit, he will smite the Nasu and the demon Hasi, Basi, Seni and Budgie. The same potent quality is attributed to the Srashyashthadokt, for it is said that he who pronounces the praise of Srasha, becomes exempt from the injury that emanates from the evil eye of the fiend, and is able to withstand the malice of the wicked worshippers of the devas, the Ytus and Parakphi.s. In many instances, the Mazdaisnian religion itself is considered the most powerful means of protection and exorcism, and is regarded as all-sufficient to counteract magical influences that might harm its follower. The Jade card, for example, relates that the witchcraft of Daffy K was dissipated and disabled by the triumphant words of the religion which Zarathustra proclaimed, and the IYT 1.4.6 a DK July 4, 72, see also ZK 719 446 Daster Hoshang Memorial Volume Selections of ZDT Sparam /A, narrate that when Ahriman, accompanied by other demons, came forth to the struggle with Ahura Mazda at the beginning of the world, the Creator cast the arch-enemy back to gloom through pure words confounding witchcraft. Lastly, the Dinati Mauagai Kairat, 57.27-29, tells that Zarathustra spoke once to Ahriman, I will slaughter and cause to run and make downcast for thee the bodies of thy demons and fiends, wizards, and witches, through thee and sacred twigs and the true good religion, and it adds that at these words the fiend became confounded and rushed to hell. A spell peculiarly fit for driving away diseases and infections is the MDNTHRD Spenta. The Ardibes Jit Yasht, YT 3.6, while enumerating the different modes of healing diseases, says that among all remedies this one is the most healing one, that heals with the holy word, this one it is that will best drive away sickness from the body of the faithful, for this one is the most healing of all remedies, and Vendid 7.4:4. Gives the following advice to the true believer, let one select as a healer the one who heals with the holy word, for he who heals with the holy word is the best healer, he drives away worse sickness from the body of the faithful. Another spell or means for driving away the demon of disease, according to Vendid 20.7, is the prayer contained in the 20th Fargard, beginning with the words, YDSKDMPTIDMPTIDI Sangmai, mark mthwdm pa /ti sangmai, zu thwdm padi sang hdmi. To the sickness, I say avant, to the death, I say avant, to the pain, I say avant, etc. Besides the above quoted spells, the Zoroastrians have a number of other mystic formulas which they utter on different occasions for the purpose of staving off the supposed injurious effects of witchcraft and other magical arts. It is related, for example, that when Zarathustra asked the Creator by what means the faithful is able to part and turn from the way of the wicked, he received the following answer: it is when a man pronouncing my spell, either reading or reciting it by heart, draws 3 furrows and hides there himself by saying, I will smite thee, Druj, whosoever thou art amongst the Druhas, that come in an open way, by hidden one Chjosyt, 11.3. Witchcraft in Zoroastrian literature 447 ways, that defile by contact. Whatsoever Druj thou art, I smite thee away from the Aryan countries. Whatsoever Druj thou art, I bind thee, I smite thee down, Druj, I throw thee down below, O Druj. Kindred protective spells of the same type are the 2 formulas recited by every Zoroastrian while casting off his nail parings and hair cuttings. Both formulas are quoted by Vendad I 7.7 ff. And, as translated by Darmstetter, mean, for him as a reward. Mazda made the plants grow, recited while throwing away the hair cuttings, and the things that the pure proclaim through Asha and Vohumino, uttered while casting away the nail parings. The Narangti Kusti, the Kusti formula, is likewise regarded as a powerful spell against the mischief of the evil spirit, for, according to the Bildation, 30.30, the resources of the evil spirit and Az, defeated by the Kusti spell, act most impotently and they rush back into gloom and darkness. This formula recited by the faithful in Tazand, every time they put on the sacred girdle, is quoted by E.W. West, who gives the following rendering of it: May a Hermist be Lord, and a Harman unprevailing, keeping far away, smitten and defeated. May a Harman, the demons and the fiends, the wizards and witches, the kigs and caribs be smitten and defeated. Another spell which drives away the fiends, is the formula en masked yd arma idish. Is chkant iand in Vendid 9.12-13. The same is recited during the ceremonies accompanying the purification of a faithful, and is so effective that in the words of the Vendid, the Druj becomes weaker and weaker at every one of those words which are a weapon to smite Tha fienden Gramenu, to smite Ishma of the murderous spear, to smite the Mlzania fiends, and to smite all the fiends. Similar efficiency is attributed to the mere uttering of the phrase in the name of God. The Bildation, 28.35, as stated above, describes Ast6 Vidhud, the demon of the evil eye, as the fiend who spoils anything that men see when they do not say in the name of God, and the Sad Dar, 15.1-2. assures us that saying in the name of God when one sees anything that is pleasant to his eyes, prevents that thing from meeting with injury. Finally, the last spell resorted to by the Zoroastrians as Iyt. 4.5-6 see also Avoe p425 fe. B. W. West, P. Mayby texts, c. 18,384 448 Daster Hashang I Memorial Volume. A shield against magical influences is the so-called Narang Karfastarch Satan, an incantation for the destruction of Bernvin, quoted by Daster Hashangji and translated by Martin Hogg. In the preceding pages, the Avathor has dealt only with such exorcisms as are exemplified by means of magical formulas uttered whenever the occasion arose. Besides these spoken spells, however, there are a number of protective means employed by the Zoroastrians, which involve an action on the part of the abjurer. These charms consist mostly of sacrifices and libations offered to the different angels. The Ramyasht, YT 15.56, for example, states that if anyone worships Vaya with a sacrifice, to him neither Yatus nor Perikfloes can do any harm. Another Yasht, YT 8.44, claims that he who offers to Tishtraya, him neither Ngramenu nor the Whitus and the Perikas can deliver unto death, and Vendid 8.80. Asserts that when a man piously brings unto the fire sweet-smelling wood, wheresoever the wind brings the perfume of the fire, thereunto Adder, the son of Ahura Mazda, shall go and kill thousands of devas and fiends, and couples of Iphitus and Perik and S. In the same manner, sacrifices to Erdvi Slira and Hita, to Varethragna, Mithra and to the Fravishis are believed to enable the performer to withstand Iphitus and Perikas S, Kabas and Karpans according to Yasna 16.8, 68.8, milk offerings and libations defeat and arrest the Perik and the malice of Ashimogat, and lastly, a sacrifice to Vanant, according to YT. 20.1, is a sure safeguard against the noxious creatures of the most abominable Ngramenu. An acted charm of the same type as the sacrifices and offerings, is the Kvituk Das, the law of next of kin marriage, regarded by the Zoroastrians as a powerful spell against demons and witches. The Pahlavi canon dealing with this custom calls it the preservation of the most grievous sin, such as witchcraft, and gives the following elaborate estimation of the relative value of this observance. If one perform the Khv Tuk Das for the first time, 1,000 demons and 2,000 wizards and witches will die. If the person observes it twice, then 2,000 demons and 4,000 wizards and witches will perish. If this rite be I Hashangji and Hog, an old Zan. Pahlavi Klo Emri / pages 23 to 24. A YT, 5.1. 10,86. J 13.104,135. 14.45, Witchcraft in Zoroastrian Literature 449 performed for the third time, then 3,000 demons and 6,000 wizards and witches will die, and if it be observed for the fourth time, then the man and the woman, performing it, will become righteous. There is still a third class of protective means that serve as charms or safeguards. These are neither spoken spells, nor do they involve any action on the part of the abjurer. They are mostly superstitious beliefs in the efficacy of certain objects as charms against witchcraft and diseases. The Parsi, for instance, believes with the Shtayist LDHT/AST/0.30, and the Saddar, 32.1-5, that the crowing of a cock, both male and female, will keep away wizards from his dwelling place. He believes likewise that the barking of a dog destroys pain, and regards the flesh and fat of this animal as remedies for driving away decay and diseases from men. In his opinion, the urine of a para kills innumerable ants * and the cries of the three-legged ass and of the carfish, as already noticed, BD 19. 917. 28.41, have a peculiar effect upon demons and noxious creatures. Very powerful exorcism of a similar type, according to Yasht 14.34-35, is the feather of the wee-raven. Are told that when Zarathustra asked for a remedy against the curses and spells of the many men who hate him, the Creator replied, "Take thou a feather of the Varangana bird, and with that feather thou shalt rub thy own body and curse back thy enemies," and Yasht 14.45.46 states that whosoever, preparing for battle, invokes the name of Varethragna and throws 4 feathers of the raven either way, on his side victory will be. Because this is a powerful, victorious, awful, and healing spell, this spell saves the head that was lost, and chants away the uplifted weapon. The conviction held by every Mazdaisnian that fire wards off danger at night from pregnant women and newly born children * has been previously discussed. Mention was also made of the Heli Yoyod in the Bind Tmain 6G4 Kairat, 62.35.36, that holy water kills noxious creatures. As the last of these Zoroastrian exorcisms, we may regard the glory or destiny, so often alluded to in the Dinhart, as a means of slaying demons, wizards, and Mons W1E West, Palmvi texts, SBE. 18.417 to 418 see above p. 434. BD, 19.3.5, *cis. 1031, 12.30. SD, 57,1, DK, 838.t, sis. 12,11,12, SD 16,1-4. Cf. AUOP 40, 57 400 and 50 de Stuk Hoshang Memo EEL Volume Ters. When the destiny came to T and KHM6 RUP, the well-armed, says the Pahlavi canon, he smote through it the demon, the wizard, and the witch / according to Dinkari 7.1.39, Kai Kusroy vanquished through it Frangrasi Yak of Tyr and his fellow miscreant Shak, Kursavazad of Bakgur, and lastly we know from the same source, DK.7.1.32, that Kir's spa was enabled by the glory to successfully combat the serpent SR6BSR, the golden-heeled demon Gandharab, and other demoniacal monsters. Conclusion. In conclusion, I wish to sum up briefly the main results which appear to have been reached in the course of our discussion on witchcraft and other primitive beliefs among the ancient Zoroastrians. Sorcery seems to have been practiced by some of the inhabitants of Iran, although we are not wholly clear as to the conception of what constituted the crime of witchcraft. The sacred books held it in extreme abhorrence and they inflicted horrible punishments upon those who were accused of this practice. The aversion to the belief in wizards and witches seemed to play an important part in the religious and even social life of the Zoroastrians. Among the other primitive beliefs recognized by the Zoroastrians was a belief in the evil eye, the good eye, and in the custom of burying the nail parings and hair cuttings, and in a tendency, shared by the other races, to abhor or to esteem certain animals. They furthermore accorded a special sacredness to the earth, they dreaded the dark of the night, and they believed, like so many other races, in the efficacy of spells and exorcisms. All these primitive customs, however, were pre-Zoroastrian, and were practiced long before the appearance of the Great Reformer and the establishment of Mazdaism as the state religion of Iran. It may be safely said that if Zoroastrianism was unable wholly to eradicate these superstitions and customs from the minds of the Iranians, it at least modified them and gave them a religious character. Columbia University, Leo J. Frachtenbera. JDK, 7,1.19. Of, also B, W, What, Pavitits, SBE. 1837, FF, Witchcraft in Zoroastrian Literature 451 List OP Works OP Reprints, AO Jamadicht. Ein paar Centroktat in PS Zinkel, Altbatrisk und Sanskrit, Herausgegeben und übersetzt von Wilhelm Geiger. Erlangen, 1878. Artsibirov Namak. The Pahlavi text, prepared by Dastur Hoshang Jamas Gasa, revised and collated, with an English translation by Martin Hogg, assisted by E. W. West. Bombay, 1872. Avesta. The Sacred Books of the Parsis, edited by Karl F. Geldner, 3 volumes Stuttgart, 1886-1896. Baumann-Yacht. The text of the Pahlavi Zandivo Human-Yacht, with transliteration by Kaikob and Diodarb D. Dastur Nasheru and Bartholomew, Christian. Altyrannish's Wörterbuch. Strasbourg, 1905. Buehler, George. The Laws of Manu. Oxford, 1886, SBE Vol.25. Bundeschen. Liber Palvicus, ed. N. L. Westergaard. Havenia, 1851. Darmstetter, James. L. E. Zendavesta, Traduction Nouvelle. 3 volumes Paris, 1892-1893. Annales du Musée Guimet, 21, 22, 24. Darmstetter, James. The Zendavesta. Oxford 1880. SBE volumes 4,2331. Dind I Maindi I Kairat. The Book of Mainyo I Card, the Pazand, and Sanskrit texts, with an English translation by E. W. West. Stuttgart, 1871. Elworthy, F. Thomas. The Evil Eye. London, 1895. Farhang I Oim Evok. An Old Zend Pahlavi Glossary, edited with a transliteration and English translation by Dastur Hoshangji Jamaspji, revised by Martin Hogg. Bombay, 1867. Farhangti Oimahak. Zend Pahlavi Glossary, ed. Hans Reichelt WZKM. In 14.177 to 214. Wien, 1900. Ganyeshtiagn. The original Pahlavi text, transliterated in Zend characters and translated into English by Peshhotan Dastur Biramji Sanjana. Bombay, 1885. 452 Dastidra Hoshang Memorial Volume Hogg, Martin. Essays on the Sacred Language, Writings, and Religion of the Parsis. 3D ed., edited and enlarged by E. W. West. London, 1891. Jackson, A. V. Williams. Die Iranisk Religion, in Grundrister Iranis Chen Philology, 2. 612 to 708 Strasbourg, 18961904. Jackson, A. V. Williams. Zoroaster, the Prophet of Ancient Iran. New York, 1899. JDMDSP and Mach. J. Ratsby, Pahlavi, Pjand, and Persian texts, with English translations by Jivanji Jamshedji Modi CIN Pahlavi translations I. Bombay, 1903. Karnd Makai R. Taxam Reifpakten. The original Pahlavi text, edited and translated by Darab Dastur Peshhotan Sanjana. Bombay, 1896. Mtign I Gujastak Abdlish. Gujastak Abolish, Text Pahlavi, Publi avec Traduction Para Barthélemy. Paris, 1887. Mtign I Yost I Fridno. G6SHT I Fridno, the Pahlavi text, with transliteration and English translation, edited by E. W. West. Bombay, 1872. Pahlavi Dad. Avesta text with Pahlavi translation and commentary, edited by Dastur Hoshangji Jamaspji. 2 volumes Bombay, 1907. Selections of ZDT Sparapi. First series, L Lo, edited and transliterated by E. W. West, in Avesta, Pahlavi etc. Studies in honor of Dastur Peshhotanji Biramji Sanjana. Strasbourg, 1904. Shatroid % Erden. In AIEMGR Izari Resen, etc., translated. With notes by Jivanji Jamshedji Modi. Bombay, 1899. Spiegel, Friedrich. Avesta, Die Heiligen Schriften der Parsen. 3 Quarta Avesta. Leipzig, 1863. West, E. W. Pahlavi Literature, in Grundrister Iranis Chen Philology. 275 to 129. Strasbourg, 1896 to 1904. West, E. W. Pahlavi Texts. 5 volumes Oxford, 1880 to 1897. Sacred Books of the East, volumes 5.18.24.37.47. Bundeischen, Baumenjacht, Shist Ifishayist, Datist en Idenig, Epistles of M. Nushkahar, Appendix. Dins I Mangi Witchcraft in Zoroastrian Literature 453 Kairat. Shikand Gayamanik Vij Arsad Dar, Dinkard. The Selections of ZT Sparam. YDTKDR Izarierden. Ayaj and Arizarierden, translated with notes by Jivanji Jamshedji Modi. Bombay, 1899. Zarlisht Endma. Le Livre de Zoroaster, Publi, Et Traduit par Frederick Rosenberg. St. Petersburg, 1904. Air. WHAOG. AVABBDCFDDDK ed. JAOS. Laza. MKH Phi. C. SDSG. Sir. Sis. Transaction VDWZKM. YF. YS. YT. YZ. ZN. ZSP abbreviations. Equals AIT Ramsts Wörterbuch. Equals AO Gematik Chess. Equals Avestan. Equals Arteverm and Smock. Equals Tliidation. Equals Compare. Equals Datastan ID Soig. Equals Ding Card. Equals Edited, Edition equals Journal of the American Oriental Society. Le Zendavesta. Equals tilde IMAIN 6Gi Kairat. Equals Polity. Equals Sacred Books of the East. Equals Sad Dar. Equals Shikand Kflmanik Vijar. Equals Sir 6 Zot, equals Shayist L, Shayist. Translated. Equals Vendidad. Equals Wien Zeit script for Dicon de Morgenlandia equals Y6SHTIFRYAN 6. Equals Yasna. Equals Yasht. Equals Yad Karel Zariran. Equals Zartusht Ensma. Equals Select Eas of Tisparam. /% IM